Great. Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. Can you all hear me? Awesome. So good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025 meeting of the City of Worcester Planning Board. My name is Albert LaValle. I'll chair tonight's meeting. Before we begin, a couple of brief announcements concerning how our meeting will proceed tonight. First, tonight, like all our meetings, is in a hybrid format. You can participate either in person here at City Hall or by going online to worcestermath.zoomgov.com/J/1617314979, or by calling in at 669-254-5252 and entering access code 161-731-4979, followed by the pound sign. To manage remote participation during our hybrid meetings and prevent disruptions, all participants are automatically blocked from unmuting themselves, turning on their video, or sending chat messages. For remote participants who would like to comment on an item on our agenda, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature in Zoom during the discussion on that item. In Zoom itself, that's a little hand icon at the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in on the phone, you can do that by pressing *9. Staff will then call on members of the public one at a time and give them permission to unmute themselves. If you're joining by phone, you'll do that by pressing *6. This is a public meeting that is both being broadcast and recorded. Minutes will also be published at a later date. To help with that process, we ask all speakers participating in person to use a microphone. To please clearly identify yourself each time you speak. And the first time you speak, please also state your city or town of residence for the record. To help maintain an orderly meeting, please address all comments and questions through the chair, that's me, rather than directly to any of the other speakers or applicants. There are a few items on our agenda tonight that are going to be continued or postponed. I'm going to read through those shortly. If you're here on one of those items, please note that no additional notice will be sent to you prior to the next meeting. The best thing to do is to call the planning department the day of or the day prior to the next meeting to confirm if the item will be heard or postponed that night. It is not uncommon for items to be postponed multiple times before they're heard by this board. Once an item is called, there'll be a brief presentation of that item, followed by any additional comments or clarifications from members of the city staff, then an opportunity for anyone from the public who wishes to speak on that item to speak before we proceed to board discussion and action. Lastly, I note all applicants should be aware that approvals are generally conditional. Decisions are generally signed by the board at the next meeting and, where appropriate, filed with the city clerk the following day, which is what begins any appeals periods. Decisions are typically not released to the applicant until all conditions of approval have been satisfactorily addressed. It is the applicant's responsibility to address conditions of approval, and a lack of doing so can result in delays or enforcements. Applicants with questions on any of that are asked to please call the planning division. Okay, moving on to postponements. Items being postponed tonight. Item number 1, 0 Farrington Street, a definitive site plan, and MGL 81G, private street improvement. The request is to postpone the public meeting to November 19, 2025, and extend the constructive grant deadline to December 4, 2025. Item number 2, 0 Chester Street, a definitive site plan. The request to postpone the public meeting to November 19, 25, and extend the constructive grant deadline to December 4, 25. In item 10A, Nixon Street, a private street betterment. I assume that's the same dates. That would be a request to postpone to November 19 and extend the grant deadline to December 4, 2025.
And make a motion to postpone items 1, 2, and 10.
Second?
On the motion, Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Delera.
Yes.
Mr. Toomey.
Yes.
Mr. McCormick.
Yes.
I think Mr. Toomey, you're still an alternate member, so that motion passes 4-0. Moving into our agenda tonight, first item we're going to hear is item number 3, which is 43 Hayward Street. This will be a public meeting for a definitive site plan and a public meeting for more than one building on a lot application.
Through the chair, before we get started, there's just someone called in with their hand raised. Do you mind if we just confirm they can hear us? And if they have a question before we start?
Sure.
All right, I think you should be all set. They unraised their hand.
Gotcha. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead
Good evening. My name is Robert Murphy, Murphy Associates Environmental Consultants. I'm here tonight representing Wolf Gentile, who's with me. He's the owner of the project and essentially chief consultant as far as the work to be proposed. The project, as mentioned, is 43 Haywood Street. Currently has a single-family house and a garage on a vegetated lot, fairly substantial size. And the house is located on the front of the lot, and the rear of the lot currently is vegetated with lawn, brush, trees, and shrubs. We have frontage with adequate utilities on Haywood Street. All of the required utilities will be coming from Haywood Street. There is a paper street to the left, which we do not propose at this time to do any work in that area. However, at a future date, we anticipate acquiring that street because of the 50% ownership. The other half of the street has been claimed by the abutters on that side. We're here tonight for a definitive site plan approval, review and approval, hopefully, and a second special permit to have 2 buildings on 1 lot. We're proposing 10 units, apartment units, on the site, and it worked out best to develop 4 units in the front and 6 units in the back. We could have done a single building. It would have been considerably taller. We felt, following the general appearance of the surrounding neighborhood, it would be better to keep the buildings lower and ask for a special permit so that we could do 2 buildings and end up with the same number of units, 10. As I mentioned, the lot currently is, the majority of it is landscaped, trees, brush, things like that. We are proposing to have 1 building in the front, 4 units, building in the back, 6 units, and all of the parking and drainage utility facilities will be in the center. It works out pretty well that way because all of the parking spaces are readily accessible to the 2 buildings from the center. It also, has all the parking and other issues that go with it, dumpsters, things like that. It's all shielded from the street by the front building. There's a single driveway on the right side of the forward building. We have met with several of the regulatory boards and the planning board, the zoning board, to gain approval of the driveway as it is designed. It's 20 feet wide, meets all the requirements. As I mentioned, we have been before the zoning board of appeals, and they have given us approval for this lot with a couple of waivers. One was for the setback of the building on the paper street side. That was approved. It was less than a foot off. It was like 0.7 feet off of the requirement. And also the parking setback on the side of the paper street was reduced in order to lower the amount of pavement, actually, and also to increase the landscaping. Essentially, what we have done is to provide you with a design that meets all of the requirements of the city of Worcester. The idea, the number of units proposed is well within the zoning regulations. and the height, size, things like that. So essentially, what we're here tonight is to request to have two buildings on the one lot, and the provisions of the definitive site plan review. I might add that we've been working with your staff for a number of months, mainly with Rose Russell, who's been extremely professional and helpful through this project. With that, I will give it back to the board and answer any questions that you and/or the staff might have.
Thank you. Ms. Russell, anything you'd like to add?
Sure. Through the chair, I'd like to just give a brief overview and run through some of our conditions. So before you tonight is a definitive site plan and more than one building on a lot application for a project at 43 Haywood Street. As described, they're seeking to construct two buildings. The building in the front has 4 units. It's 2 stories from the front, and then it has a third basement level that's visible from the back. And then the building in the back is 3 stories and has 6 units. And in between them is a parking lot with 16 parking spaces. So the project was recently before the Zoning Board of Appeals in August. They received relief for 4 parking spaces from the 20-space parking requirement for the 10 units. And they also received some relief from the side yard setbacks for the building in the back, and then for the landscape buffer running along the west of the parking facility. So tonight, they're seeking site plan and more than one building on a lot. For the more than one building on a lot approval, we just have our standard recommended conditions, just evaluating the access to both residential buildings related to that. I'm just hoping to go through some of our conditions of approval. So the design of the parking lot, we had a couple comments on. So regarding pedestrian access from the street, there is access from Haywood Street to the first building, but then there's stairs up, and then around the building there's stairs down to the parking lot. So there is accessible entrances to both buildings once you're in the lot, but due to the grade change on site, it's just not feasible to provide that accessible pedestrian entrance from the street. They have provided, and I can switch back to the site plan, they've provided a striped path through the parking facility that leads from the back of Building 1 to Building 2, which is great. We love to see the dedicated pedestrian infrastructure. We had just asked the applicant if they'd considered an alternate treatment, stamped concrete, pavers, anything to further designate this since they're not able to separate it from the parking facility. We had also asked, and it's highlighted in our memo, it's going to be tough to see here, but around the northwest and northeast corners of the parking lot, there's 2 catch basins, and there's some striped areas around the landscaping, so we were just hoping that it may be feasible to regrade that area so the catch basins are will still work as designed, but we can add some of that landscaping back in. And speaking of landscaping, we have some other comments regarding that too. With the layout of the site, 2 buildings, it's not a layout we see particularly frequently, and it renders a lot of the site impervious. They are proposing some on-site infiltration. They have 2 subsurface units, and they've provided quite a bit of information in regarding to how they intend to handle that and manage and operate it in the future. But we're just hoping that there would be some opportunity to gain some of that landscaping back, just given how much of the site is going to be impervious. Some additional questions to the applicant. They have some amenity space in the first building, if it's going to be, how it's going to be programmed, and whether it's going to be available for residents in both buildings. There's an interior bike storage room. I think it's 12 bicycle spaces, and then like an empty room, which we were just curious how it was going to be programmed. And we also asked that the bike parking, that there be some exterior bike parking for residents in the back if they don't have access to the interior secured bike storage, and for use by guests. Some other comments we had were in regard to lighting. Some of the fixtures spillover onto neighboring properties in the right-of-way is not a concern from the photometric plan they provided, but it's particularly bright right around the fixtures. So we had asked that they provide some dimmer fixtures and that they reduce the mount height a little bit so they're right in line with the first floor elevation. So you could use dimmer fixtures a little bit closer to the ground to give it a more residential feel. We had asked that they increase the row of arborvitaes on the right side, so that's where the neighboring building is. On the left side, we have the Paper Street Rice Lane. But on the neighboring side, they have this row of arborvitaes, which is great. We just ask that they continue that down, so it provides more mitigation for the neighboring property. And then regarding some trees in the rear, we had just asked that they beef those up a little, and use deciduous trees rather than, I think there were arborvitaes in the back, just to provide some more shading. There are some mature trees that are being taken down on site, so if there's any more substantial plantings, we'd love to see that. They're also providing quite a bit of different benches and picnic tables around the site, trying to provide that amenity space for residents and that open space. There were two proposed in the rear of the building. On the very back, we had just asked that they consider whether it's feasible, given the grade change and the landscaping, whether those would be utilized by residents, if there's maybe another place on site that would be appropriate to put those. And then just for some of our other conditions, we had talked about details we wanted to see included, guardrails, fencing. There's some notes about erosion control and details provided, but we're looking for an erosion control plan to be submitted. Other than that, we have some DTM and DPW conditions of approval included in our memo, and I'm happy to talk about any conditions the board has questions on, or if there's any conditions the applicant wants to discuss before moving forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Any additional comments from members of the city staff? We don't have DPW tonight, is that correct?
That's correct. They're not available tonight.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item tonight? Come on up, sir. Just a reminder, please use a microphone. Make sure the little green ring is on. That's how you know it's working. And let us know your name and your city or town of
My
residence.
name is Edward Arell. I live at 114 Vale, which is the backyard of this proposed item. I did mention at the last meeting that in the corner there, we have what has been described to me now. I had it inspected. It's a, give me 1 second, vernal pool. I had frogs there. I had a bullfrog this last spring, all night long. We've talked about the water coming into the yard. That was explained. It was also told to me that this is a go. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, they're going to get to do this. So I heard about the lighting. This building that they're going to put there is my backyard. I mean, it's facing my bedrooms, my bathrooms. We look out those, you're going to see that, and that's it. So their lighting is going to disturb us. I also would have a question regarding the, who's going to be managing this? Are these apartments being sold? Are they going to be managed by somebody? Is there going to be someone on site? That Paper Street you guys are talking about, that's been fenced off for almost 6 months now with boats behind it. So what's going to happen to all of that? Last meeting, there was talk about the fire department. The fire department wanted some kind of thing on how they're going to be able to get in. Who's going to be handling the trash? We have a dumpster problem now. Are they going to be, the city going to be backing down this little pathway to pick up the trash? Are they going to be picking it up on Haywood Street? There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. And like I said, my biggest concern is this water's been coming in my yard now for 10 years because of what was done originally by the other owner. And I've dealt with it. I spoke to them about it. I've had to deal with it. I've lost a shed because of it. I've listened to frogs. I've dealt with not being able to mow that corner of the yard. A couple questions do need to be answered. Who's going to manage this? How's it going to be managed? Are they going to be on site? What's going to go on with the trash? The fire department's concerned. I'm concerned. These people are going to be in my backyard, literally. What kind of fence am I going to have? What kind of privacy do I get now? It'll all be taken away along with the value of my house. Be my comments.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the public? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to board discussion.
I guess I can start. I don't have any particular issues with the site plan itself. I do appreciate staff's comments on regarding the striped area adjacent to those catch basins. Just wanted to clarify, is that currently a condition of approval?
Through the chair, I don't believe that was listed as a condition. I'm hoping if the board is interested in adding it, that the applicant could advise on the feasibility of doing that, or if we add some flexibility in the condition for that to be explored after the fact.
Yeah, I guess I would be interested in hearing the applicant's response to that.
Sir, do you want to address?
Yeah, could you speak a little bit louder into the microphone, please?
Yeah, the question was the staff suggestion to extend the area adjacent, the landscaping area adjacent to the two catch basins on the northwest and east side of the parking lot.
Yeah, okay, we did review that. And what initially, we thought that, having the area striped pavement would be beneficial to people who, might need a little more space to get out of their car. But they could step out on the grass just as easily as pavement. So we are proposing to plant, a low-growing dense grass in that area. However, the actual area directly around the catch basin and the drainage channel that goes to it would be paved. So you'd have like a 4-foot paved area just to keep dirt from being eroded into the catch basin, but the rest of it would be landscaped.
Okay, so it's,
If I might also add, when you're talking about drainage and landscaping, things like that, we acknowledge that there is a problem with, the fellow who just spoke. He does have a problem with water, getting onto his property, but it's not coming from our property. It's coming from the property, above us. It passes through the rear of this property, a low spot, and continues on to his yard. There's no question. We have addressed that with the stormwater management design so that in the designed storms that we have, 10, 25, 50 year, 100 year, we've actually reduced the drainage runoff onto his property by volume and the called the Q factor or the velocity. I just want to point out that that is an existing situation that we had to deal with as well. And if it continues to be a problem for him, you may want to take a closer look to what's happening above us that causing this problem. Other than that, I'll leave it.
okay, thank you. It sounded like the applicant was open to maybe a condition regarding the expanding that landscaping area. So I would support adding that in. And I guess to respond to a couple of the commenters, member of the public's comments, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the trash, because of it's a multifamily, would have to be privately serviced.
That's correct.
Yeah. And as the applicant just noted, this project will be treating all of its stormwater on site, so there should actually, I would imagine there would be less stormwater going to that area that is a concern. So hopefully that's an improvement. And I do note that they have a pretty substantial landscaping plan, so hopefully over time that vegetated buffer does create some space between you and this new development. So I'm not sure if that answered all or addressed all of your concerns, but just to respond to a couple of them. But otherwise, I don't have any major issues with the site plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCormick. Mr. King, any comments?
No, overall, the plan seems okay. I was just looking over the photometrics again. It does seem like they're somewhat dimming the lights as it gets over to that 114 Vale, so no additional concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Delera?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I have no concerns. I think the staff comments and recommendations are appropriate. And so if those are adhered to, then I would be in support of this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delera. Mr. Toomey?
No comments, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple questions for myself. So I heard Mr. McCormick, and I think Ms. Russell, we'd be looking for staff to recommend a condition on just narrowing the landscaped areas we were discussing related to your catch basin, understanding that there would still need to be a sort of path for the water. My second question is, there are 4 compact spaces and 2 EV spaces that are proposed. Wondering, for the EV spaces, is the applicant willing to put one charger online at occupancy?
Well, first, my question is, you mentioned the number of compact spaces. How many did you say there were? Because there's quite a few.
Staff believes there's 4.
Okay, 4 and then 12. Yeah, we met the requirement for that. If we think that the larger spaces would provide, plenty of space for that as well. And your other question?
Related to the EV charging spaces, sir, the question was, would the applicant be willing to put one charger online at occupancy? And
This is Wolf
Your
Gentile.
client is nodding.
He's the applicant. He can answer.
Hi, this is Wolf Gentile. I'm the current owner of 43 Haywood. Yes, so as per the email that we get today, they requested 10% to be online. So we should be able to do that because we're gonna have the EV ready anyway. It's a matter of running the wire.
yeah,
So-
that'd be great, and we recommend it, and appreciate your answer on that. And staff also noted, so there's a total of 12 trees you're proposing on site. They had recommended adding 2 deciduous trees in the rear of the site next to the gentleman's property who was commenting. Are you willing to do that?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yes.
If I could add to that, the trees that are there now are what we call invasive Norway maples. And they're good-looking trees. The problem with Norway maples is that they kill all the other trees around them with their, believe it or not, chemicals that come out of the roots actually make it difficult for other plants to grow, which is not good if you're trying to keep sugar maples in New England. You don't want these trees to continue to grow the way they are. So we're going to remove all the Norway maples and replace them with trees that are less susceptible to Asian longhorn beetle and other invasive insects. But we have no problem with landscaping in the rear. That's, we'll probably end up putting more trees than what you had suggested, just because it markets well. It's good for the property.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And the last comment I'll have, I'm generally in support of this application, but the comment I would make to the abutter, sir, is development in your backyard is never easy. There's always a little bit of disruption that goes along with it. What I would encourage you and encourage the applicant to do is, have conversations and try to meet each other halfway where you can. This board, our role isn't really to talk about who's going to manage the property or some of the other, whether or not they can see onto your land or things like that, but we can encourage, outside the narrow confines of our review, please be good neighbors to each other and try to address concerns when they come up. That, I think we're ready for a motion.
Sure. Maybe before I make a motion, do we want to add a condition regarding the landscape islands?
Through the chair, if I could suggest some language, I would say adding a condition 1O, and then the rest to be renumbered afterwards. Just to say, relocate the catch basins in the northeast and west portions of the parking lot and landscaped the striped areas accordingly.
I think,
All right.
and maybe the applicant's design team can confirm that the inlets can just be shifted to be located within the layout of the parking area itself, rather than sort of, essentially, if we could go to the slide, right, there's like a hatched, in the northeast corner, there's a hatched L-shape area that's proposed, I think was described for people to be able to more conveniently open their door our recommendation is that that entire hatched area get landscaped, curbed and landscaped, so that becomes part of a higher level landscape buffer, and the inlet that's proposed in that be moved into the parking lot itself. So shifted sort of into the center, and then the same would be true on the left-hand side there, on the southeast or southwest, whichever direction that is, that I've now turned myself around. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure the applicant understands that.
Before I make the motion, is that the applicant okay with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. With that, I would make a motion to approve the, actually, I'd close the public hearing first.
Second?
Or is it a public hearing?
No public hearing.
Okay, take it back. I'd make a motion to approve the definitive site plan and more than one building on a lot for 43 Hayward Street, subject to staff recommended conditions of approval on pages 2 through 5 of the staff memo, including, and the addition of a condition 1O with subsequent renumbering of the conditions. The condition 1O regards, as stated by staff, regarding the landscape islands.
Second?
On the motion, Mr. McCormick,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Delera.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item we're going to hear tonight is item number 4, will be 9 Ashland Street. This is a public meeting for a definitive site plan. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name's Gershom Gulko. I'm a lawyer here in Worcester. I've been a lawyer here for 46 years. To my left and to your right is Adam Gaval. He is the property manager and developer of this property at 9 Ashland Street. He's been before you before. He's been through other boards as well. He has an ability, and in fact, a history of taking underutilized properties, sometimes dilapidated properties, and turning them into the Taj Mahal. 9 Ashland Street, when he acquired it, was an abandoned drug house. And he has formulated plans to make it suitable, modern, efficient housing. We've been before the zoning board and have prevailed, so to speak. I've asked him to bring with him some blow-up boards of a recent project he did on Blackstone Road that shows you the kind of work he does. And frankly, in my experience, and I've represented him and his father and his siblings in this type of business for at least 40 years. And he puts his heart and soul into it, puts substantial money into it, and I don't want to waste your time and deliberate further, but he will address everything with regard to site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. Additional comments on this item from city staff?
Through the chair, this is Rose Russell in the Planning Division. Before you use the definitive site plan review application for 9 Ashland Street, today the building is an 8-unit low-rise multifamily dwelling, and they're seeking to convert it from 8 units to 16 units, mostly doing interior work, and they are adding a parking lot in the rear of the structure with 9 parking spaces. As stated, they were recently in front of the ZBA, where they received variances and special permits for relief from the minimum frontage, minimum side yard requirements, maximum number of compact spaces, and then minimum off-street parking requirements. This property is also within the Crown Hill Local Historic District, so they have received approval from the Historical Commission to make modifications since the building is locally registered on Macris. So in the rear of the building, they're proposing, like I said, 8 parking spaces. Most of these parking spaces are compact. Sorry, I think I'm zoomed in a little bit. And we did just raise one concern. So the driveway is 20 feet at the widest point, and it pinches down as the building juts out. And then in the back, there's 1 parking space in this driveway, which reduces it if a car is parked there to, I believe, 13 feet. And then once you get to the rear, the parking facility has 8 spaces. A number of them are compact, and we did just have some concerns about parking space number 1 all the way to the left, and the ability for folks to utilize that parking space if someone's parked in number 2. So we're hoping the applicant could address that. We do have some recommended conditions of approval, but the review is pretty limited given the improvements are almost wholly interior with just the addition of this parking facility. We had asked if the applicant was able to or had considered getting any off-site leased parking for their tenants. And then just for our recommended conditions, we had just asked for an update to their infiltration system where if they could add a connection to capture the roof runoff, to also infiltrate the roof and the parking lot runoff, and then just to depict the location of trash bins. Like was stated in the previous application, they're over, I believe it's 7 units, so they're not eligible for municipal pickup. So given the site is just so tight already, we were just hoping to see where those are going to be stored. And then just to note, this property is located in the infill growth area in the Now Next plan, aiming to encourage mixed-use development on vacant or underutilized properties in existing areas with high walkability and transit access. This property is not far from here. It's just outside the downtown district, but certainly a dense housing area. In an area with a lot of on-street parking, you can park on the right side or the east side of Ashland Street. I'm not sure if it's signed as resident parking only. Maybe the applicant could address that if their tenants would be eligible for on-street parking, restricted just for tenants to kind of help aid that parking concern. But we also received some DTM conditions. So I'm happy to address any questions or comments the board might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item tonight? Seeing none, is there anyone online? Okay. Does the applicant want to address any of Ms. Russell's comments that she brought up before we go to board discussion?
Yeah, so I apologize from the get-go. New England Environmental Design was the person who put the site plan together. They were supposed to be here tonight, and I think due to a health-related matter, they didn't come. But there's 9 parking spaces. One of them is EV. I don't know if you see the bottom right. There's one space over there. That's the EV space. I just wasn't sure if that was clear on Ms. Rose's comments. Regarding the parking, I'm in talks with the neighbor. If you see kind of to the left, there's 12 spaces over there. I haven't secured a 5-year lease because his concern is if he sells the building in a few years, there's nobody's going to do so. I'm talking to them, and I'm also talking to the church, which is across from Pleasant Street, and they're both interested in leasing spacing. It's just that the 5-year clause that I believe the board or that the city requires was kind of the issue, and I raised that also when we went to the zoning board meeting, saying that I'm confident I'll secure a lease with them. It's just hard to get a 5-year lease from the get-go. And regarding, what else was there? Regarding the trash, it is, we proposed roll-off was the initial, but there is 2 dumpsters within 20 feet of this project. Literally in the neighbor's yard on the bottom right, there's a dumpster that's, I'd rather partner with them and it's already there, upgrade it from a 4-yard to a 10-yard and just enclose it. And I think that's a better avenue. Or the neighbor also has a 4-yard. So there's a 4-yard already there, already utilized on both sides of this property. So I'd rather work with them for the trash rather than do a roll-off, but as a backup, it would be a roll-off, bins put out once a week to the front. And I think there was a mention of Department of Transitional Motors, or is it DTM? Yeah. So their comments they gave to us in the last meeting, the zoning, which we addressed them there. Pretty much we agreed to, I think, most of them. I think one of the clauses we did not. I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize. But, and then the other comment was DPW. They said, what are you going to do for the sprinklers and domestic? It's going to get upgraded to a 2-inch copper line. And it's going to be separate. It's going to be one 2-inch line coming in. It's going to branch off. There's going to be one dedicated for sprinklers, one dedicated to domestic, and it's going to be like 10 feet from the property. It's going to be a shut-off on each. So I'm not sure if there's any other things I missed, but that's the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those answers. Ms. Russell, any other questions?
No more questions. I just want to make sure the applicant, I think we do have an abbreviated letter from DTM, and it doesn't look like we have any DPW conditions. So I just want to make sure everything listed is.
We got an email this morning.
This morning.
DPW, yeah. So I don't know. I could pull it up if you'd like, my cell phone. But that was kind of their concern.
Through the chair, if there's any permitting issues with DPW, since unfortunately we don't have someone here tonight, any requirements for permitting would have to be addressed after. It's usually a good time to do it now, just so they don't run into any issues down the line. But I'd be confident in DPW's ability to review after the fact if they're not included in the decision.
Understood. It sounds like they're in communication with the applicant, so I'd be comfortable there too. Board discussion?
For myself, with the proposed conditions, I'm all set with the site.
Okay. Mr. King?
No concerns, happy to support. Thank you.
Mr. Delera?
Same, no comment for me. Thank you.
Mr. Toomey?
No comments, thank you.
Okay. I think for myself, I'm also satisfied with staff's review, appreciate the applicant's answers to some of the questions. The work looks great. I know a little bit about renovating some of the buildings in Worcester, and it seems like you do a great job, so happy to support.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to better. I'm a Worcester boy, so I'm trying to make Worcester better.
Yeah, there you go.
With that, I would make a motion to approve the definitive site plan for 9 Ashland Street, subject to staff recommended conditions of approval on pages 2 and 3 of the staff memo.
Second?
On the motion, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Delera?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, item number 5, 225 Shrewsbury Street. This will be a public meeting for a definitive site plan amendment.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Joshua Lee Smith. I'm an attorney with Bowditch and Dewey, and I'm here to, as you indicated, Mr. Chair, we're seeking a modification, slight modification with respect to this project. This is a project that I believe most of the members, not all the members, were present at the time. Back in 2024, we had obtained a CCOD special permit as well as site plan review in connection with this project. This is an existing shopping center site, pretty high profile along Shrewsbury Street within the CCOD-S overlay district and the BG2. My client is proposing to expand the site, well, I should say demolish, number one, with respect to the warehouse building, ambulatory warehouse structure that's currently there now. And then, thank you, Rose, the expansion, about 15,000 square feet of expansion area to accommodate additional retail, as well as my client is specifically intending to relocate the existing DCU bank branch that's currently there now. So they're looking to relocate them to the end unit here to the far right, as you can see. So the one substantive item that we are looking to amend here is the removal of one of the conditions, which, to be honest, at the time, we did have some discussions leading up to the meeting, and then ultimately there was a vote, and the condition, we kept saying, no, we can't do it, and then the condition ended up staying in there for the vote. So it was a little bit of an oversight on the team, and as after the vote occurred, our design team looked into it further, tried to see whether it was feasible or not, and it just didn't work. We had a number of discussions with DPW and Sean Quinlivan with respect to this condition, as set forth with respect to in your memo pertaining to the 100% roof runoff with respect to the proposed addition of a 10-year storm. So what my client with the civil engineer, who I believe is online, Danelle Baptiste of High Point, had always envisioned with respect to the design would be basically a 5% system, which in his opinion, and I believe Sean Quinlivan agreed prior to the vote, that it would be more than adequate in terms of a system. There is a net reduction in impervious here, and so that's what we are looking to strike, this condition that made it into the decision the last time around, and all the other proposed conditions of approval, recommended conditions of approval as provided by Michelle Smith and her team are completely fine with us. I will say that the project is good news. The project is looking to break ground within weeks. So this project is going to happen. The team is very excited that we're going to have a project in Worcester that's breaking ground. That doesn't always happen. So we're pleased to report that, and we're looking forward to hopefully getting the board's support on this one modification, and then we can move forward to hopefully break ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Smith. My understanding on the issue, by the way, was we had tried to condition it in such a way, because I was present at that planning board meeting as I was in 2022 and 2019, the many times we've discussed this site. My understanding was there was some sort of language along the lines of if feasible or if possible that was in the condition, and just because it was very not feasible, basically ISD has come back and said, hey, we do need you to just double check. That's why we're here. Okay, understood. Any additional comments on this issue from staff?
Through the chair, Rose Russell in the Planning Division. I'll give a quick overview. So you have a site plan amendment application in front of you. As you recall, the project was to construct a 15,000 square foot addition to the existing building at 225 Shrewsbury Street, so the Mexicali, and then there's a couple different storefronts. And then they're going to be shifting DCU to the very end of the property and adding a drive-through to the DCU and making quite a lot of different improvements in their parking facility. One of the conditions, they received both a CCOD special permit and site plan approval from the planning board. The applicant worked very diligently after the hearing to address all of the original conditions of approval, with the exception of this one, which reads, and I don't mean to say they didn't try to address it. We did have a lot of conversations, and I want to give the applicant credit for that and their attempt to do it. And also just to say, this is an important site in the city. It's in the CCOD. It's on Shrewsbury Street. This is an important part of the city, and we had a lot of conditions, and there's a lot of discussion at the time. So I think this condition, if they were not amenable at the time, it was one of a very long list of items that they have addressed. So the condition, they're just seeking to strike it from the decision. It says incorporate a subsurface detention system of 100% of the roof runoff for at minimum 10-year storm, and incorporate infiltration on site if soils are suitable, groundwater offsets are met in compliance with the stormwater standards and handbook. So the condition requires 100% detention and then infiltration if it's feasible on site. They're not proposing any detention. They're proposing a small infiltration system. As you can see, it's clouded in red on the plan. It might be a little tough to see, but they are proposing to recharge a 1/4 of an inch of stormwater for the additional roof space. So they have provided some level of infiltration. They've cited poor soil composition, site constraints, and high water table as limiting factors as to why they are not able to do this. And just the way the condition was written, they had to detain 100% and then infiltrate if possible. Such a large reduction in 100% of the rainwater, inspectional services determined, requires an amendment. It's not in compliance with the condition as voted on by the planning board. So they're just seeking to strike it in its entirety. And so we have striked it from our recommended conditions in addition to all of the other original conditions which have been addressed. The only 2 things left in there are some new comments we received from the water division of DPW. But other than that, the applicant would be permitted to seek a building permit once they've addressed those and provided a construction management plan. So I'll leave it there. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item? Seeing no one in the room, is there anyone online? Seeing none, board members?
No concerns for myself. It seems pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Mr. King?
No concerns, thank you.
Mr. Delera?
Agreed, no concerns.
Mr. Toomey?
No comments, thank you.
I also have no comments. This seems mostly administrative, so I think we're ready for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the definitive site plan amendment for 225 Shrewsbury Street, subject to staff recommended conditions on pages 2 and 3 of the staff memo.
Second?
On the motion, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Delera?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to next item on our agenda, this will be item number 6, 76.5, 78, 80, and 82 Providence Street. This will be a public meeting for a definitive site plan and also a public meeting for more than one building on a lot.
Bear with me one moment, Mr. Chair.
Sure thing.
Thank you. So again, just for the record, Joshua Lee Smith with Bowditch and Dewey. I've got a design team behind me, as well as the head of school, Kevin Breen, representing Worcester Academy in connection with this faculty housing project. Rose, you've got our slide deck up and ready, I believe. I'm just going to run through a really brief background. I'm going to hand it over to Clay in just a moment. Could we start with the neighborhood aerial? So as Rose is pulling this up, the site is located within the RG5 district. This is right off of Providence Street. To give it a little more context, this property is also located directly across from the Academy's, Worcester Academy's historic main gate, their main entrance, which is across the street at 81 Providence Street. The building that you see there on the left is a triple-decker. It had been there for a number of years. It's actually been raised and removed recently in order to accommodate this project. What my client is proposing to do is to provide faculty housing by virtue of 2 new ground-up buildings that will contain 4 units each. Again, for faculty, these will be 2.5 stories in size and will provide 10 on-site parking spaces. And here's the neighborhood. Outlined in red here It is surrounded by mostly residential properties to the left and north there. To the right is an existing nonprofit entity. And again, down on the screen here below is the Academy's campus. Could you go to the next slide, please, Rose? And there's that main gate, as I'm sure many folks are familiar, again, directly across the street from the proposed project. So here are the two buildings, buildings 1 and 2. Again, 10 proposed on-site parking. We are proposing some bike storage as well as some EV-ready spaces in order to accommodate the use of the site. This will be faculty housing, so it can't get any more ease of access with respect to being able to walk across the street. We're going to get into some renderings in a moment, but in addition to these buildings, we're also proposing some pretty robust landscaping along Providence Street, to provide some tree line with respect to shade trees, a combination of shade trees and bushes and other types of pretty diverse plantings. We are aware that in this particular district that there is certainly a preference with respect to having parking be located in the rear of these buildings. I will say, and Clay will get into this more detail in a moment, I will say this is a Dover Amendment protected use. It is a educational use. This is part of the institution. This is part of the campus. Worcester is a little bit unique in that they've got a definition that provides that a campus would include this lot. It is directly across the street from the main campus and across from the main gate. So it's unique in that way, and so as you'll see from these renderings in a moment, the real purpose and intent of the style of these buildings was really to be compatible with not only the main campus, but also to fit in with the neighborhood as well. So there is a uniqueness to having the parking situated the way it is. Some of the reasons for having the parking situated in the front as opposed to the rear includes the minimization of impervious surface, which I know that is something that the board and the city strives for, the heat island effect. If the parking were to be in the back, there would have to be an extended driveway, which would be a little more challenging with respect to maneuverability, cars going into the back. There are residential properties in the back. We felt that there would certainly be, for those residential properties, it would be nicer to not look at a parking lot as opposed to looking at a backyard. As I said, there's going to be a pretty extensive amount of plantings. Our original design offered some plantings along the street to soften that buffer, to soften the fact that there's parking along the street. Michelle and her team has requested some additional plantings, which we've agreed to. So we think that it really is a beautification to the neighborhood, obviously an extension with respect to the Academy's campus, and we think it is certainly in furtherance of their educational purpose. Could you advance to the next slide, Rose? This is just a quick depiction so you can see the parking layout as shown here. So basically you come into the site and there's parking right in the middle there, and then to both sides, 2 accessible spaces, 1 for each of the buildings. And next slide, please. And so here I'm going to hand it over to Clay. As I mentioned, we're showing some of these. These are buildings and structures that are on the Academy's historic campus. So there was a lot of thought that went into the design of these buildings and the location and siting of them that went into the ultimate product that you're looking at now.
Thank you.
Clay?
Yeah, sure. My name is Clay Smook. I'm with firm Smook Architecture and Urban Design. I've been practicing architecture in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts since 1989. Worked for several firms and started my own firm a little over 20 years ago. I moved my firm from downtown Boston to Westboro to sort of bring a level of Class A architectural and urban design services to Metro West, and it's been a wonderful journey. My firm, as I mentioned, does urban design. We really look at projects and what their impact is to the city and the street as much as it is about architecture as sort of a jewel and an icon. We started this project, I would say, earlier in the year, late last year. Began really looking at the existing buildings that were on the site, as well as the buildings and the triple deckers that are lining around the building. I think some of the things that we gleaned from the site was the buildings tend to be in sort of a Richardson Romanesque design quality, but they also have certain sort of Frank Lloyd Wright qualities to them. They generally have a central entry, and they tend to have hip roofs. And so we looked around the neighborhood. On the bottom left is a building, actually, which is a triple deck, which has one of those hip roofs. Next slide. So this is an elevation. This is actually an elevational perspective of what it would look like if you were to look at, and well, I will mention that the landscape that happens along the roadway is removed in this illustration. There are subsequent illustrations by the landscape architect. This exhibit really is talking about the architecture. We sort of created this hybrid type of building. So obviously the two buildings are the same. They are mirrored. What you're seeing here is a 3-story on the outer edges of the site is a triple decker, 3-story building that has 2 bedroom apartments, one stacked over the other, and adjacent to it and sort of conjoined by a central entry is a 2-story townhome unit, which would hold 4 bedrooms, and it would be what we can sort of consider a family home. But again, sort of marked by that central entry. The buildings really are mimicking and reflecting the architecture, again, hybrid of the neighborhood and the institution. And the idea is to, in fact, have the campus sort of bridge Providence Street to the other side of the street, and that these buildings sort of become the threshold to the gate across the street. Next slide. Next slide, please, when you have a chance.
It does take just a second for it to propagate through sometimes. There we go.
So this is an important slide because it goes to the back of the buildings, and what I will say is there is a significant grade difference that sort of runs from the northeast goes from the northeast to the high point down to the, southeast to the northwest. It's about 6 or 7 feet, but you can really see the way this thing, the buildings are stepped. They're about 3 feet difference if you were to take finished floor of the building beyond and the building in the foreground. I think one of the things that, next slide please, one of the things that we were really trying to concentrate on here also that I would suggest about the master plan is really creating green spaces. We talk a lot about a total of 8 units. It's 8 homes. There are going to be 8 families living here, and it's important that they have open green space. So we actually have 2 green spaces as part of the project. One is between the 2 buildings, and one is directly to the northeast, and it's sort of a pocket park. So what you're seeing here is the diagrammatic plans. The lower level plan is on the left. The townhouse unit has a lower level, which has a walkout, which has a media room and or playroom and or additional bedroom. This building, this townhome building on the left, is fully elevated. So it has the lower level, the main level, and the upper level, and there is an elevator that will serve that, and it is a Group 1 handicap accessible unit. If you go to the next, go back, I'm sorry. Go back one. The image on the right on this slide shows the ground level. You have an accessible entry with a sloped path that leads you into the building. There are no handrails because when we design buildings from scratch in 2025, we like to make the buildings as close to grade level as possible. So you're entering the building sort of in that indigo color. If you're in the family unit, you take a left. There's a generous kitchen, dining, et cetera, with a stair up, a half bath, and an elevator to serve the upper floor. And then on the right is that first unit, which is a 2-bedroom townhome unit, a 2-bedroom flat unit, excuse me. This is the one where it's stacked, has all the amenities that you would think of as a flat. You know, this unit, again, because it's on the ground level, is what's called a Group 1 accessible unit. Next slide. So on the next slide, again, we're back in the townhouse on the left. It's sort of the yellow ochre color. You've taken the elevator or the stair up. All the rooms are accessible, all the baths are accessible, so it's a totally accessible unit. On the right side is that stacked flat, which is, in this case, it is a stair that takes you up. A generous central stair tower takes you up to the unit that lies above the other flat. These last two units that are stacked are not required to be accessible, although we're carrying the dimensions from the lower level nonetheless, because being disabled doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a wheelchair. So what you're seeing here is stacked on the right, again, a flat number 2, and then all the way on the right, you see in that pale color is number 3. Next slide. These are the elevation drawings of design development. They're not rendered, but they are labeled to talk about the level of materials that we're building here. These are going to be built as legacy projects, so they're not seen as disposable housing stock. We're using real materials. We're using real brick that we'll be choosing that's going to marry into the look of the existing building. Lots of architectural detail, cornices. The windows will be sort of a Pella window, which is not a vinyl window. It will be an aluminum-clad window that has real wood on the inside. Obviously, all this meets the current energy code. The building is also clad in boral, which is a fly ash product. It's a little bit similar to, I'm sure you've all heard of Hardie product. It's a little bit better than that. It doesn't absorb moisture, and it holds paint incredibly well. When you touch it, you will not be able to tell the difference between that and wood, but it will last over 50 years without needing maintenance. Next slide. So again, what's really interesting here on the slide on the right is to see the grade difference. It's actually more pronounced in the rear of the building, as you can see. Again, it's about a 6-foot grade difference. Next slide. So I'll hand that back. With that, I'll hand it back to you, and I'm certainly willing to take any questions. I think one of the things that I did want to mention is the aggregate of this site. I think it's about 19,000 square foot and change. There were 3 separate parcels here. When I began to look at this, we looked at every single type of building type that could be put on this parcel, from 3 individual single-family homes, 3 townhomes, 3 triple-deckers, and then also apartment style, which would have a double-loaded corridor. We decided, after vetting all of that, that this conjoined 4-unit project with basically a townhome conjoined to a triple-decker made the most sense in terms of fulfilling the requirements and needs of the faculty of Worcester Academy. So back to you.
Thank you, Clay. That really concludes our formal presentation. There are some conditions of approval, recommended conditions of approval in the DPRS memo. We agree with the vast majority of them. We're down to some discussion, which I think we're going to have with respect to EV chargers and bike storage. But other than that, I think we're very close. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Additional comments from staff?
Sure. Through the chair, this is Michelle Smith in the city's planning division. So as was stated, you have in front of you this evening site plan review, and with more than 1 building on a lot, the applicant has requested to withdraw. That is in part due to a Dover determination that the applicant has received from inspectional services related to the educational use that this supports. As part of that, they've not only been determined to not be subject to the more than 1 building on a lot regulations, so you can withdraw that when you move to a vote, should you do that, but also relative to certain aspects of zoning compliance. So when I say that, I mean generally dimensional requirements of the ordinance or items that would specifically require discretionary approval. So in this case, the parking requirements, the rear setback have both been determined to be reasonable in the context, as well as the location of the parking in front of the building, which would typically be prohibited by the zoning ordinance and only allowed through a special permit, has been determined that that is permissible in that location absent that special permit. So those are the 3 kind of design elements that are being modified here because of the nature of the educational use and the accommodations provided for in the state law. So that determination was included in the materials submitted by the applicant and available to the board. Just a little context to the discussion. So what's proposed is really 8 units of low-rise multifamily in 2 different structures, so 4 in each. And We have a variety of comments. The applicant gave a very detailed summary of what's proposed, so I don't want to belabor that. Instead, I think I'd rather kind of work through the conditions that we have. I think just more generally, if the board members read through the narrative of the memo, our commentary was really around looking for the applicant to consider an alternate design that really completely flipped this kind of on its head. And I know the applicant discussed that quite a bit, but just to kind of reiterate in terms of urban design principles and the direction of the fabric that we're trying to create for the community and the city is to have the buildings closer to the street, the parking to the side or to the rear hidden behind the building, which is really a lot of the fabric of this particular neighborhood and the way that the cities have historically developed, just so you don't see the parking. So as you're walking along the street or enjoying the street, it doesn't feel like you're in a sea of parking, which we're talking about later this evening, our parking requirements. So anyhow, you'll see the kind of commentary on that. Ultimately, again, it was determined that the orientation is reasonable within the confines of zoning, but certainly the board has the opportunity to discuss through the site plan review process and the different review criteria that you have to evaluate the proposal. Related to the conditions, and the applicant provided some feedback on the comments that we have here, so I will kind of address that as I go through these. A lot of our comments did relate to landscaping and providing additional landscaping. We had some comments about the electric vehicle charging. So as the board members are familiar, specialized stretch code requires that the applicant install the conduit to have spaces. So the board has been asking folks to sort of volunteer to go further and actually install the charger and put it online, because all of the infrastructure is in place. So why not let people charge their cars on the property rather than having to go elsewhere? The applicant has indicated they have other chargers available on the campus and that their preference is not to install a charger here at this location until a time that the demand comes. There is no requirement for that. It's just something that the board has generally been requesting. So we are fine striking, as the applicant has requested, condition 1B. DTM also has a similar condition, which is 1V. Which we would also strike. Ultimately, they will still need to meet the specialized stretch code requirements for the conduit, and hopefully, should the faculty that will be living in the building need to charge their cars and find it inconvenient to use the ones elsewhere on campus, hopefully the academy would accommodate the need. We have a couple parking spaces that are located towards Providence Street where there's just a jog in the kind of pavement, which creates an awkward configuration for folks parking in those stalls. So we're looking for those parking stalls to just be converted into fully compact and width, and then have a wider landscape buffer just for uniformity. We're looking for some additional shrubs kind of along the entirety of the front of the lot, and then some trees in areas that don't really have trees to bring it into compliance with what we'd typically see for a proposal. So minimum of trees every 50 feet, and then where parking abuts the street, trees every 25 feet. And then given the potential loss of canopy on the site, also asking for another tree to be planted in that kind of, it's northeast, but basically plan right area where you see kind of a bit of open space. There's a little bit of a slope in that area. So that covers it for trees. And then I think the other items that the applicant requested modifications to were related to bicycle parking. So that is 1D. Here, we have asked for one bike parking space to be provided per unit. Given the applicant does have elevators within the buildings, folks could take their bike up to their upstairs unit for storage. We were concerned that folks maybe wouldn't be able to do that. So we are comfortable with reducing that condition so that it says reflect that a total of 4 bicycle parking spaces be provided on the site. And then on the site at grade, I think we can strike. Does that work? Just making sure that that is good with the applicant's team. So we'll say reflect a total of 4 bicycle parking spaces to be provided on site at grade.
Uncovered?
Good?
Oh,
Okay.
yes, for
4.
period, right?
That's
Not
what
covered.
I said, 4.
Not covered.
Does not say covered, nope. And then with respect to condition F, they would like to strike the number 4. We are fine with that. There is in the condition outlined more than 4 trees as we describe it, so I think it's just redundant, but we could strike that. And then they have also asked to strike condition 1U, which relates to trash operations, which is not proposed on the site, so we are fine with removing that condition, given that kind of context, and that this is related to a larger campus where there is likely other waste disposal occurring. I'm happy to talk more about other requirements that we have, generally asking the applicant to label what trees are going to remain and what trees are going to be removed. We're hoping that a number of the mature trees might be able to stay, although given the location of site work, thinking that that's unlikely and making the assumption that none of them are, but hoping that that can be explored in the field a little bit more. We're also looking for removal of any chain link fencing and installation of fencing in place where it's necessary with solid style, wood, stockade, vinyl, something along those lines, or other decorative ornamental non-chain link variety fences. And then specifically along the southeastern property line, I believe it is, where the property abuts 84 Providence Street. The headlights are just pointed in a way that it could create glare for that property, so we're looking for some additional plantings or a fence along that line to just help prevent spillover of headlights into the neighboring property. So relatively minor comments. There are also comments I'll just note from DPW and DTM. Within that, if you have questions, I can do my best to answer those. And I do believe that the last comment that DTM had, which is condition 1X, I think we had decided that this has essentially been resolved because that is not a desire line, but hoping that the applicant could just clarify. I may have missed that in your comments, but I just want to verify that that did get addressed. I think that is it as for my comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has. Thanks.
Josh, do you want to address anything that's still outstanding based on that?
Sure. As I said, my client team agrees with the vast majority of these items. I think what I heard from Michelle was with respect to item B, that would be, item B and V would be struck with respect to the EV.
Yeah, I said item B would be removed, item U, item V.
V, yep. Okay.
V is in Victor.
Yes.
Yes.
I can speak quickly with respect to item X that Michelle had just mentioned before. So this refers to the desire line, which we had some discussions with Victor as well previously, and he had talked with DTM. So our conclusion is that if for the occupants of this site, the strong likelihood would be that they would be utilizing Etna Street, which is, if you're within the buildings, you're coming out, going towards Providence Street, you would take a left, not a right. So you would take a left down to Etna Street. That's the first block, and where the location of an existing crosswalk is today. That would make most logical sense because it is most proximate to the main gate. Again, that's if people are going to meander down that way. The reality is they probably would just walk directly across the street. So the way it was explained to me through Victor was that if that's the case, that's our conclusion. I think the team can support me on that. Then item X would just simply be removed. As Michelle alluded, I think it's been resolved.
So I think the board just needs to agree, and if you agree, then we can strike that as well.
Okay.
And Michelle, you had mentioned item F with respect to reflect 4 additional deciduous shade trees. I didn't quite follow what you were suggesting with that.
The red line that you gave us requested the removal of the number 4, as I understood it.
Reflect additional? Okay. In discussing with our civil engineer, who also does double duty as a landscape architect, he's confirmed that item F, we've actually, in our updated versions of the plans, we've actually incorporated those comments. So I'm fine with your change as long as we're in agreement.
Okay, so it sounds like it doesn't matter either way, but we can take out the number 4.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great.
And the bicycles, I think you were in agreement with respect to 4 uncovered bicycles, which I think is fine. That's how it's been designed. And then lastly, just item A, I will say, probably warrants just a little bit of discussion so that we're comfortable. I think the language of the condition is fine, but just so everyone here understands what we are proposing in order to satisfy this condition. As shown here on the screen, we submitted this to Victor earlier today. There are 2 areas there in green. So this condition pertains to a pedestrian walkway from the main entrances of the buildings to the sidewalk. So in an effort to, again, try to minimize, most of this is green grass, open space area. We're trying to minimize impervious surface. So on plan left there, that is in somewhat proximity to the entryway. So there's a hardscape there from the top leading to the sidewalk. That is one area that we would propose as being an ADA, MAAB compliant access to the sidewalk. The second one, with respect to, I think we are labeling that as Building 1, would be the other green shaped area, again, near, somewhat pretty close to the entryway there, from the hardscape leading to the sidewalk. On this one, again, we're trying to minimize additional disturbance with respect to impervious surface. The only other alternative to this, in our mind, would be to provide something to farther plan right, which is I think Clay had described it sort of as a little pocket park, which is the passive recreational area for this site. We would have to install there a very kind of long, meandering walkway in order to go from what would be probably farther from the main entrance in order to get to the sidewalk. Again, that would be on the far right, and it would take up a lot of that open space area. So what we would propose is to have, again, that green area there, which would lead from the hardscape directly to the sidewalk. It would cut in a little bit of the landscape buffer there, but that would, we would provide some slight delineation with respect to painted lines, and we could do different materials to delineate it, but that's what we're proposing to satisfy this condition.
Sure, and through the chair, in terms of staff's position, I think certainly the southern or left, plan left location's fine. You know, if they need to shift it closer to the parking area for some reason, that's fine too. The idea is just to have a direct pedestrian connection for folks that are walking from campus onto the site rather than having to walk through the driveway. On the right-hand side, further to the north, the applicant is just sort of proposing a striped area through the parking lot. So I guess in that instance, I would defer to the board about if you feel it's advantageous to have that with a different material or striped or just not bother. Something that the board members could discuss. My only question would be if the applicant considered an adjustment to the short retaining wall that's located along the front property line, and instead of having that continue in a straight configuration, consider an L shape on the right-hand side so that you could just extend the walkway kind of to the east along the northern side of the parking area there out to the street, and then have a similar size retaining wall. Just a portion of that would catch the grade going into the site. I don't know if that was explored. It sounds like it was, but that was just, I think, when we quickly looked at it, you know, without looking at grading, thought that's the most kind of direct route that folks might take. Certainly would prefer to see the open space area and the green space stay as to a ramp that folks may not use particularly frequently. But I guess that would be the one place that I'd maybe ask if you could just talk a little bit about if that was considered, if that's not possible. And I can point out what I'm talking about if what I'm blabbering on about doesn't make sense.
Good evening, Paul Matos with Allen & Major Associates, where I'm the civil engineer on the project. To do the sidewalk that you're talking about on the right-hand side there and come straight and doing an L shape on the wall, it's not going to work because we have a 2-foot grade difference between the parking lot there and the sidewalk. That's the reason why we have that short retaining wall there. It makes sense to have the path that's shown on the green path on the screen there, because we're kind of closer to the back edge of sidewalk elevation because we're right there at the entrance. We're almost at the same grade that we could probably make that work versus coming further north and then east towards that Providence Street. So we'll prefer to keep the path as shown with the green line and have it delineated in a different material or striping.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I guess maybe the board can weigh in at this point. But before we get to that, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item tonight? Yeah, come on up. If you guys could make some room, please.
My name is Joan Danko. I am the trustee of 23 Arlington Street.
That's, looking at that diagram, 23 Arlington Street is in the upper right-hand corner in back of the number
Thank
2.
you.
Your right building is number 2? Yeah. Yeah, so it's right in back of that.
Okay.
So I'm her husband, so,
I assume you have a name.
so
So could you tell us what it is? Sorry,
Yeah.
they write minutes for this.
she knows. So these proposed houses are pushed way back in the lot to the point where the one on the right is, I believe, 9 feet from the boundary as written on the plan. I would guess that violates an offset requirement. More than that, we take issue with the boundary of the property in that location. Could I assume the print is accurate and to scale? And if you see that there is a retaining wall in the far right corner that's on the Academy property, according to this print, and her grandfather, first of all, the property has been in the family for almost 85 years. Her grandfather built the retaining wall to stop erosion. And he and his family have maintained that stone wall, retaining wall, for all that period of time. So that would even reduce the offset even further than the 9 feet. So that's an issue that we want resolved. Second thing is there are a line of large trees in the back of this house. I don't know which ones are going to be kept, but there are power lines going through them. The electric company almost refuses to even service the electrical lines because of the hazard of the trees. Building these houses that far deep is going to make accessibility almost impossible for them to remove. So we want to know, is that part of the plan to remove those trees and adjust the power lines, et cetera?
Sorry, any other questions or?
I have another comment.
Okay.
Another concern.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other concern is drainage. If you go from the front left corner to the rear right corner toward my wife's property, it's a good 10-foot, if not better, drop. Then beyond the retaining wall, there's a 5-foot drop down to her property. So the slope is in that direction to the far rear right. I know you talk about having some infiltration system, but where ultimately is the water going to go? Right now, there is no drainage issue on her property. There's no washout, there's no erosion. We want to make sure that's kept that way.
Okay, sir.
I don't know where the outlet is.
You have to talk to me, not to them, sorry.
Okay.
I can answer a few of your questions, and then I'll ask the applicant's civil engineer to answer some other ones. But as it relates to setback requirements, that was kind of the first issue that you brought up. This property has been determined by, not this board, but by inspectional services to qualify for something called the Dover Amendment. You may have heard some folks mention that in their comments. That is a provision in Massachusetts law that exempts educational uses, maybe religious uses too, I'm not a lawyer, from certain provisions of the zoning requirements. That's one of them. So without going into great detail on the Dover Amendment, the head of ISD reviews the proposal, determines whether or not the requests are deemed reasonable. It's outside of this board's review, and once it's done, it's done. So he's determined that the siting of these buildings is reasonable given the educational use. That was thing number one.
So even if the boundary, which is in dispute, is such that the offset is 3 or 4 feet, that's still fine?
If the boundary's in dispute, I mean, they've certainly surveyed the building or surveyed the lots as part of their process, and I'm sure that they believe that they understand where the property lines are. You have the right to go and survey the lot lines as well, and if you don't agree, that becomes an issue that's...
Understood.
Yeah, outside my purview, but would have to get resolved. As it relates to the stone wall, if I understood you correctly, you're saying it's on their property?
If I look at the print, it looks like the stone wall. is
Yeah,
on the-
I do see a wall there, which I assume is what you're talking about. And I just want to be clear, so 76, that's you folks? Did I get that right, or did I get that wrong?
23 Arlington.
Oh, behind, okay, gotcha. Okay, so where is this stone wall then?
Other house that's still existing. But the wall goes in back of the other house.
Through the chair, I think you can kind of see it running right along the property line on the right side and then going north at the very northeast corner.
Ms. Russell, do you mind trying to hover your cursor over that area? There you go. Yeah, it's sort of an L shape at the corner of the property there, and it kind of coincides with where the lot line is being shown. It's a little hard to see with all the lines.
Got it, so,
It's not on the line, there's an extra couple of feet back of the wall.
when we ask the civil engineer to come up, I'll ask them to address whether or not they're aware of that. The other question regarding the power lines,
And the trees.
yeah, in the trees, sort of being intermingled. Being around Worcester for a long time, there's a lot of that kind of backyard in between two street power lines, trees, all intermingled. I'd be interested to know their plan for it, but I'm sure it's going to have to get addressed as part of this project.
Yeah, good evening again, Paul Matos with Allen Major Associates. So the trees we have defined on sheet C101, we define which trees are going to be removed and which trees are going to be kept. So the trees that are right along on the property line or within a foot of the property line, those trees are going to be remaining. There's a couple of trees that are right directly behind number 23 Arlington Street that are going to be removed. So those 3 trees are going to be removed. As it relates to the power lines, we'll work with National Grid, and if they want us to clear the trees for them or something because it's going to give them better access to the power lines, that's fine. But that's something we'll have to work with National Grid. As it relates to the retaining wall, you can see that the retaining wall is shown right on the property line, and it does cross over a little bit, but part of it's on their property, part of it's on our property. So typically with a wall, you usually go to the center line of the wall and stuff. But again, I don't have a detailed plan that shows the exact limits of that wall, but it's kind of running parallel with the property line. We're not touching that wall. The wall is going to remain. So as it related to the setback requirement that he said that we're 9.5 feet, the actual building is 10.5 feet from the property line. The roof gutter overhang, that's what we're measuring at 9.5 feet, and that would be elevated up 25 feet up higher and stuff like that, so. And for stormwater-related issues, currently, there's no stormwater controls out here. All the water drains in the northwest direction, off-site onto Arlington, or it drains towards towards Providence Street. So we're proposing a stormwater management system. It's going to be designed in the parking lot. We're going to be reducing stormwater flows by 67% for the 2 and 10-year storm, and then it gets down to 25% for the 50-year storm, and in the 100-year storm, we're just managing it with an overflow into the municipal system in Providence Street. So the only thing that would be flowing naturally in that direction would be overland flow going through the grass and stuff, and we've shown a reduction in our calculations as submitted to the board.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate those clarifications, Ms. Smith. You had
Through the
something to
chair,
add?
I just wanted to contextualize to what the setback requirements are. So if this building or either of these buildings were one unit less, it would be considered a three-family, and they could actually be located up to 8 feet within the property line based on our zoning without any exceptions. That's the zoning ordinance requirement for a rear yard setback. So what has happened here is that the applicant has argued that it is reasonable for them to be located closer than the 15-foot requirement for 40 units, but not as close as the 3-unit requirement, right? So they're proposing 10.5 feet. That determination was made by inspectional services that what they are proposing is reasonable, likely using that logic. Although it's closer than it would typically be for a structure of the size. You could have a 3-unit structure of the same size located 8 feet within the property line. So just to contextualize that a little bit. So it's not that they don't have to apply or meet any requirements, they just have to be reasonable. And so in this case, applying that logic where you could have basically the same size structure located in the same location or even closer, it was determined that it was reasonable for this use to be located there. I hope that helps clarify a little bit because it's a unusual thing. We have the setbacks and you're like, why aren't we applying them here? Because there's a little bit of a caveat with the use based on the state law that just supersedes in this case. So hopefully.
The bottom line is that it's very close to the rear boundary, and the concern is for safety with the trees and the power lines. And with this house with these 2 houses in place, how are people going to get access to that? God forbid if one of the trees falls down and takes the power lines down.
I would presume, having done some development, National Grid is going to remedy that situation, whether that's by rerouting the power lines, installing new poles, or just removing some of the trees if the trees are growing into the lines. You'd be amazed what they can do with a bucket truck over the top of a building or around. But they're going to make sure that they have access to handle the power.
And just getting back to the drainage, so right now, there's no erosion on 23 Arlington Street. No surface flow. That's how it's going to be once the construction is done?
What the gentleman is saying is, and sorry, just to remind you, you have to address comments through me, and they also have to address comments through me. What he's saying is that the conditions that they monitor, and there's standards for this, indicate that we're going to be capturing more of the runoff in the future case after they've built the building than is currently being captured. So the situation is not going to get worse, it's going to get better. You're saying the situation is good now, it's not going to get worse.
So we're not going to be seeing groundwater breakout, for example, since the property is 5 feet below the lowest point of the Academy's property.
That is what the calculations show, yes.
So, and through the chair, maybe we could just review the drainage plan that's proposed. So maybe the applicant's engineer could just highlight now that we have it on the screen, but basically where they're proposing the stormwater management is in the very front of the site, about as far away, from your property as possible. And then the kind of interconnection will happen with the city's drainage system in Providence Street. So you can see kind of on the bottom right-hand side of the plan, there's something that kind of looks like an elbow. That's a drain line that's going from the stormwater system that they have on the site, which is sort of mimicking the natural process that would happen with lawn by slowly letting water leach into the ground and storing and slowing water before it leaves. And then if there's too much water in that area, it will overflow into this drain line, which connects into the city's surface line in Providence Street. So if there ends up being an issue, it'll end up being out that direction compared to out the rear. And I'll ask the applicant's engineer to correct anything that I got wrong, but just trying to simplify a lot of our jargon, that's generally what's happening on the site.
But one of the reports says that there will be drainage toward the Arlington Street system. So where's that coming from?
There's only overland flow of what's flowing there today. So we're taking the buildings, directing it towards the infiltration system in the front. So we've minimized what's happening that goes there today. So whatever flows in that direction today will be maintained. It's not going to, we're definitely decreased because, again, we have the buildings are being captured, being collected into the storm system, located in the front, and in the front, after it's certain storm event and the water can't infiltrate into the ground anymore, it starts to overflow into the Providence Street drainage system.
Okay.
Okay, appreciate you guys coming with your questions tonight. Thank you.
And through the chair, we do just have the demo plan that we can pull up and just point out where the trees are noted as to be removed in the area that I think they're concerned about. And I
Sure thing.
don't think we got the gentleman's name.
I noticed that.
Sir, can we just get your name for the record? Yes, we did not get your name, I don't believe.
Joseph Danko.
Thank you. And this plan here is the demolition plan, so you can see it shows the trees that are proposed to be removed. So in that top right corner, again, where it abuts the property, we've zoomed in a little bit. I know it's hard to see. You can feel free to go up to one of the TVs if you'd like. But there are the trees in the area that you're referring to are shown as to be removed where they're on this property.
So I can't see from here.
Sure, I'll just point
But,
to them too.
Just a
but
question, what trees will remain in back there?
These trees right here. So there's a 36-inch tree, I don't know what species, an 8-inch, and then a 15-inch. Those three are proposed to be removed. So they would be behind the chain link fence, kind of towards your property, but closer to Providence Street than the retaining wall, if that makes sense.
And what about at the left corner? Up, no, to the left, right there.
Over here?
Yeah, what-
That tree is shown as to be protected. So there's no proposed change for those trees. But
I
it
think
sounds,
that's where there are electrical wires going through them. And again, access, I've seen buckets used in the past, but this is going to be extremely tight. So again, it's a safety concern. But thank you.
Thank you.
Joe,
Uh,
give him your number or give him Howard's number.
I'll let you guys exchange contact information. Is anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this item tonight? Anyone in the room? Seeing none. Anyone online? All right, let's move on to board discussion.
Okay. I guess maybe to start with the conversation or condition on the sidewalk or sidewalks. I think as staff was commenting, it would kind of having a preference to see both the sidewalks be not through the parking lot. I think I saw a sketch on another plan of maybe an idea of trying to figure out a way to get it from the building to the sidewalk, not going through the parking lot. If that's possible, I think that would be my preference. But I'm sure the other board members can weigh in on that as well. Otherwise, I guess, big picture, I appreciate the detail and time taken on the architectural side of this project to match the existing Worcester Academy campus and the neighborhood. Certainly, I would agree with staff's comments that we would prefer to see parking in the rear, but acknowledging this is a Dover Amendment project, and I don't really see that the board is in a position to change that at this point. Otherwise, the pedestrian connection, which I think was condition 1X, if I read that condition correctly, we were considering striking it because the thought is that the pedestrian desire line would be to use the Etna Street crossing.
Through the chair, Connor, you said Etna Street?
Yeah.
Etna?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think someone might have said it. It seems most likely to me that they'll probably use neither and just cross mid-block. I'm assuming the city wouldn't like to see a mid-block crosswalk, but, so I don't know if there's a great solution to that, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, I would feel comfortable striking that because I would agree if one of the two intersections were to be used, I don't, makes the most sense. I think I heard it described as a pocket park to the northeast side of the lot. Is there any like programming or anything plan for that space, or is it looks like it's just set to be like loam and seed grass, or is there anything that's proposed to be there?
No, it's just planned to be loamed and seeded right now. There's no plan for anything else right now.
Okay. It does seem like that there's an opportunity to add some landscaping or amenity space or something. That's just a thought or comment. But I guess I'll leave it there. Overall, happy to support it. But yeah, I would be interested to hear the rest of the board's comments.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Mr. King?
Just a quick question through the chair to the applicant. If they did do the pedestrian pathway in front of building 1, would they take out the trees that are proposed in the, I guess, that landscaping buffer before it gets to the sidewalk?
Yeah, so I believe we're talking about building 1 being the right,
Yes.
right? Yeah, so if that's what's preferred, then there would have to be some adjustment with respect to the plantings that are proposed in that landscape buffer in order to allow for that walkway to connect to the sidewalk. And in that particular location, I don't know, Rose, do you have the, maybe show the rendering that shows the landscaping in that buffer? So, looks like those are low-lying bushes, probably?
Right where the hydrangea is and the high grasses. So that's kind of where the walkway would be coming out.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question. Happy to support otherwise.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Delera?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I agree with Mr. McCormick's take on this, including the sidewalk area. And I would also just like to say regarding the architecture that I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into this design. I wish that some of the other projects that have been proposed throughout the city had even a portion of the thoughtfulness that this one has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delera. Mr. Toomey?
No comments, thank you.
Okay, it seems to me like the only issue that's sort of remaining is the sidewalk from Building 1. I have to say, I would prefer generally that a pedestrian access way does not require walking through a parking area. That said, I'm not sure that it's worth the compromise here of having to put a ramp or relocate some landscaping or deal with any of those issues in order to do this, because it seems to me like folks are going to probably just walk across the parking lot almost regardless. So I would be inclined to accept the applicant's proposal. I actually would request you don't stripe it through the parking lot, because I think that actually just sort of makes it a little bit more awkward. There is a pedestrian access from Building 2, but as far as like the path of desire that we talk about all the time, folks are just going to walk through the parking lot and out the driveway. Not necessarily ideal, but given the conditions of the site, I think it probably makes the most sense in this case. I know staff brought this up. We certainly, we need to mention this just for other applicants that may come before this board in the future. We do prefer parking to be in the rear of the site and buildings to be closer to the street. In this case, Dover Amendment has sort of already removed that consideration, but I would add that the enhanced architectural character of these buildings is an acceptable compromise in my mind. To that, I think they look nice as rendered. I hope they come to fruition in that level of elegance. Sometimes we see renderings that don't wind up getting built the way they look. I don't think that's going to be the case here, but it has happened in the past. So in general, I am happy to support. I don't think there are any remaining items we need to discuss, or am I missing something?
No, I think I heard that you're striking X, and then, based on the discussion, if your comments, Mr. Chair, summarize the board sentiment, I think I would adjust 1A to say, reflect a dedicated pedestrian walkway from Building 2's main entrance to the sidewalk on Providence Street. The walkway shall be ADA MAB compliant. And then for DTM's condition S, just strike the S in points to make that singular. If that's
right.
acceptable to the applicant.
Unless there's no further issues with the applicant, I would, actually, before I make a motion, I just review. Amendment to 1A that Ms. Smith just noted, removing 1B, amending 1D to read, reflect a total of 4 bicycle parking spaces to be provided on site, full stop, the rest gets deleted?
The rest of that sentence, and then we would keep the requirement that the bikes still be AP, BP, and essentials of bike parking compliant.
Okay, so keep that second sentence.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So item D, I think we're saying total of, instead of 8, we're saying a total of 4. And then the rest, I mean, the sentence goes on to talk about 6 being within the building.
I'm just going to read it. So reflect that a total of 4 bicycle parking spaces be provided on the site at grade. All bike parking must comply with the essentials of bike parking guidelines released by the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals.
Agreed. Thank you, Michelle.
Cool. 1F, were we just removing the number 4?
You got it.
Okay. 1S, removing the letter S, and striking 1U, V, and X. So I would make a motion to approve the, actually, should I make a motion to withdraw without prejudice the more than one building on a lot separately?
Through the chair, you're welcome to do them concurrently if you think you're going to vote the same on both.
All right, I'll do them together then. Motion to withdraw without prejudice more than one building on a lot and to approve the definitive site plan for 76.5, 78, 80, and 82 Providence Street, subject to staff recommended conditions of approval on pages 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the staff memo with the amendments and striking of the conditions as we just outlined.
Second?
On the motion, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Dolera?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we end, can we just, head of school would like to say something.
Just a quick thank you. It's an important project for us, and we're committed to doing all we can for the neighborhood. But this in particular gives us a chance to retain faculty now that the rents in the neighborhood have increased, and it gives us a chance as faculty join our community and grow as families, we're able to accommodate them and keep them and have teacher service for a long time. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is going to be item number 7, 232 Stafford Street, a public hearing for a zoning map amendment. I was
Evening,
told
Mr.
there would
Chair.
be- I was told there would be video.
There's always video when I'm here, Mr. Chair, generally. I shouldn't say always, generally. So for the record, Mark Borenstein, I'm an attorney at the law firm of Prince LaBelle here in Worcester. I represent the 2 co-developers of this proposed project, and I'll get into that in a minute. The 2 developers are E77 Development LLC and Connecticut Realty Trust. This evening, I'm joined by representatives of those teams. We have I just want to clarify that we've requested that Worcester Academy submit this petition, but the project and what will be discussed is what's being proposed by these 2 development teams. So I just want to make sure that's clear for the record. So we've got a short video, and then we're happy to answer any questions that you or the staff has. Thank you. Can we move that full screen? No sound. There should be sound.
Board members online, just give us a second here while we try to troubleshoot the audio.
Pertaining to the existing property located at 232 Stafford
hear it, it's just really soft.
Approximately 30. Oh, yeah, it's soft.
Oh, we broke it.
There I am.
Located in the residence single-family.
Come on, Rose, we can do this.
And is partially within the floodplain overlay.
There you go. Where's the image? There we go. Yeah.
Worcester Academy seeks a zoning amendment pertaining to the existing property located at 232 Stafford Street. The lot has a total area of approximately 36.6 acres and is occupied by Worcester Academy's athletic fields, an accessory structure, and surface parking facilities. The property is currently located in the residence single-family RS7 zoning district and is partially within the floodplain overlay district. Worcester Academy has petitioned the City Council to establish the Residence General RG5 zoning district at the property. Worcester Academy is seeking this zoning amendment on behalf of E77 Development LLC and Connecticut Realty Trust to allow for the development of a residential community at the property, which will likely include a mixture of residential uses, including duplexes and a multifamily building. The development team is proposing these denser types of uses because Kettle Brook is located along the westerly portion of the property, and therefore any proposed buildings and related development will need to be located along the easterly side of the site. The development team is currently contemplating a 5-story multifamily building with approximately 140 residential units, 40 duplex buildings with a total of 80 residential units, and off-street parking for residents and guests. These types of residential uses are currently prohibited in the existing RS7 zoning district, but allowed in the proposed RG5 zoning district. The proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the Worcester Now Next plan because the subject property is immediately adjacent to a managed growth area, which the Worcester Now Next plan has identified as an area within 1/4 of a mile walk of existing and potential future transit corridors that can support moderate increases in housing density from what is currently allowed by zoning. The development team seeks to enhance the existing transit corridor by coordinating with the WRTA to further extend the bus line up Stafford Street to the extent possible. Furthermore, the RG5 zoning district provides the ideal zoning district buffer between the RS7 zoning district along Ludlow Street and the manufacturing uses and zoning districts to the south of the property. The RG5 zoning district provides opportunities for denser residential uses without the potential for less desirable business or manufacturing uses.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may just briefly, before this meeting, we coordinated with the district councilor, Haji, and we facilitated a neighborhood outreach meeting with, I think we had probably 50+ residents come and ask questions and learn about the project. So we had a great dialogue. We are committed to continuing that dialogue. So just want to make you aware of that outreach that occurred within the community.
Thank you, appreciate that. So additional comments from city staff on this tonight?
Sure, through the chair, this is Michelle Smith again in the city's planning division. So as was stated and you watched in the lovely video, this is an RG5 district that the applicant is seeking to establish at this location. So you can see the existing zoning is the RS7 that you see in this section of the city. The property itself and what's petitioned to rezone is approximately 37 acres in total. So it's a relatively large area. You saw as well that the property's got the environmental constraints as well as some topographic constraints along particularly the western side of the property where the river kind of carves through, and everything beyond the river to the west further is quite steep. So the floodplain that you saw will stay unchanged. That is something that's established by elevation and not by zoning as much as it is by zoning. It just basically defers to FEMA's maps. So that's proposed to remain the same. In terms of the RS7 versus the RG5, the board might be familiar, but there are pretty substantial differences within the residential use classification. Beyond the residential use classification, most of the other uses that would be allowed elsewhere in the city, manufacturing and business uses, are regulated in the same way. The exceptions are that in the RG5 you could have an urban farm, which is defined by a size, so something that's more like what you would see at the REC versus a couple raised beds in someone's backyard. And then there are other uses that become allowed but only by special permit, and those include basically undertaker, office, service shop, and personal services, so things like a barber shop and other forms of kind of low-intensity business uses. And again, those would be regulated through a special permit. The same with respect to lodging houses. That would be allowed, but only by special permit. Otherwise, RS7 is our second least dense zoning district, so we really only allowed single-family dwellings. The RG5 is our highest density residential district where we allow high-rise multifamily by right. So there are a variety of differences, but ultimately it's still only residential uses that are really being allowed were the zoning to change here. There are differences in dimensional controls. Generally speaking, the RG5 is more permissive and the RS7 is more conservative. Because the RS7 really only contemplates single-family dwellings, there's really only one set of standards and everything else is other. So lot area and frontage for any other uses would be the same as a single-family dwelling, while the setbacks would increase and be greater. The RG5 setbacks generally are a 15-foot front yard setback, a 15-foot rear yard setback, 10-foot exterior side, 8 to 10-foot side setback, which is not too different from what is required in the residential district. The big difference would be that in like a high-rise configuration, you could have a height up to 90 feet or 8 stories. So that's obviously a sort of dramatic difference than a 2.5-story single-family residential dwelling that would be allowed by right. In terms of historic zoning, the property actually was zoned manufacturing in the way back. So if you go back to our earliest maps in the 1970s, this area was part of the manufacturing district you see kind of spread across Stafford Street. So that actually extended up and included the old mill buildings, the Kettlebrook Lofts in that area, went up to Main Street essentially, and then over to the city boundary. In terms of the change that happened at some point before 1991, and then we essentially have the zoning that we have today where a large RS7 tract came in and established itself in this entire section, basically going from Leicester to Auburn town lines and taking up this component of the city. And in doing that, some of the uses along Stafford Street, although not this property, became non-conforming, most likely. So the board members are probably familiar with the site as being owned and operated by Worcester Academy as athletic fields. Historic maps do indicate that the area was actually a playground at some point prior to that, so generally has a past history of recreational use as far as our records were able to discern. But overall, the neighborhood as a whole is generally residential to the kind of northeast and to the southwest. And then you have this kind of pocket of relic manufacturing that does actually still operate in that location out to James Street. There is another pocket of RG5 that is located further to the south where Botany Bay has a variety of property along, I think, Clover and James Ludlow area, so not too far away, but that's the kind of closest RG5 to this particular location. And then obviously you can see the changes of land use as you kind of drive down Stafford Street. There's more business uses kind of as you approach Hurd Street and James Street, and that's really a function of the zoning. For the most part, actually, the land uses do generally align with the zoning districts in this area of the city, which is not common. So that's something that is a little bit interesting, but happy to talk more about that. As was mentioned, this area is in a baseline sort of background growth area, and that's just simply because of the definitions we attributed to the geographic extent. So the managed growth really relates to the proximity to a bus line. So because the area is not serviced by bus line, it's not within that area, although that is nearby. It's just simply outside of that walkshed at present. So it's in that kind of background growth area. Not to say that it was studied specifically. The analysis was not a parcel by parcel analysis of land use. And in particular, given the use and the environmental constraints, likely wouldn't have been one that we would have looked at thinking and anticipating its redevelopment. So happy to answer any questions the board might have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item tonight?
Just really quickly, before Attorney Lee Smith speaks, I just want to make it clear for the record that the conceptual plans that are showed in the video are conceptual. Certainly, what's before the board this evening, as you know, Mr. Chair, is a petition for rezoning, and so we're simply asking for a recommendation, but I just want to make sure that the record's clear that that is conceptual at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, again, for the record, Joshua Lee Smith with Bowditch and Dewey. So I just wanted to say quickly, on behalf of the Academy, who is the current owner of this property, the Academy strongly supports this petition, this zone change. was looking for a potential buyer that was a multifamily type of developer. And so very excited to hopefully see this site transformed from what had been athletic fields, I think going back to around 2004, which is when around the time when I started as an associate, when this was developed as athletic fields. It's come time now for the academy to move on from the site. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on in and around its campus, and so we're strong support of this petition. Thank you.
Understood, thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this item tonight? Seeing no one in the room, anyone online? Okay, board members.
For myself, no concerns with this proposed amendment. I think as was mentioned, this seems to align with the city's Now Next plan to add some moderate, change the zoning to allow for some moderate increase in density along a key corridor. And I think it will allow for a higher and better redevelopment of the site, so happy to support it.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Mr. King.
Happy to support this. Thank you.
Mr. Delera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I agree. I'm in support of this, and I'm glad to see a reasonably dense area to be added in this part of the city. Thanks.
Mr. Toomey.
No comments, thank you.
Okay, I'm generally in support of adding some density to our residential areas, so I'm happy to support this petition. This is a public hearing.
So I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
On the motion, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Delera?
Yes.
I vote yes, 4-0, hearing's closed.
And I'm making a motion to recommend to City Council. Yeah, so I'm going to make a motion to favorably recommend the zoning map amendment for 232 Stafford Street to City Council.
Second.
On motion, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Delera?
Yes.
I vote yes, that motion passes 4-0.
Thank you all.
Thanks. All right, next on the agenda, we're moving into other business. We have a zoning ordinance amendment discussion, which maybe I can tee up Ms. Smith for. Essentially, what this is in the City Now Next plan, there were a number of sort of zoning items that were recommended to be taken before a comprehensive zoning overhaul. The first was ADUs. This is kind of the second. This is not, we're not discussing an amendment at this time. We've been referred this item from City Council, who was given the item to potentially make comments on. They referred it without further discussion. It's going to go to us, then it's going to go to Economic Development, and once that opportunity for input has been taken, then staff will actually draft some recommendations. So what are we thinking about?
Yeah, through the chair. So what you've captured is absolutely correct. So we don't, you are often used to seeing very specific proposals for change this word to that word. This is not that. We are just soliciting at this point your thoughts about what direction to go with the amendment that we'll be putting forward. So nothing specific to react to, but what we did provide in this informational communication to City Council and what we hope to do, just overarching process, is after taking comments from you all to revisit with the Economic Development Subcommittee and get feedback from council at that platform, and then sort of that'll likely get filed, and then we will go to work in preparing something that we hope is responsive to the comments that you all provide, but also to the feedback we heard throughout the citywide long-range process, as well as kind of best practices and staff capacity to implement whatever regulations we come up with in terms of changes. So that's kind of process-wise where we are. So I'm hoping that maybe we can talk just quickly about the existing parking requirements, because I think while many of the board members are familiar with them, we do have some newer board members and newer in this capacity. Anthony, who was serving on zoning board and got quite the show of parking relief requests. So some familiarity there, but I thought it would just be worthwhile to just quickly walk through what the existing requirements are. And now next, this is one of the three low-hanging fruit. So we had ADUs, which, as the chair stated, we've kind of tackled or in the process of tackling, then parking, and then tree canopy protection and sort of planting requirements as a third. outside of the overall zoning overhaul. So the idea was to get those done ahead of the zoning overhaul. So we're making headway, starting with this next. The plan would be to have this conversation and then come back with a proposal, probably sometime in the spring, depending on exactly the timeline that this process takes. And of course, hear community input if folks have thoughts to offer. So the board members are familiar that parking has lots of costs. Those are financial, those come from an equity standpoint, from an environmental standpoint. So parking is not always good. So I think just quickly talking about what our parking requirements are today, we require parking for basically any new uses or changes in land use. So if you have a new building or you're changing use from one thing to another, we're looking at the parking requirements. We see this as a challenge a lot of times for folks that are either looking to occupy a vacant space or they're building a new building. So we see small businesses coming in wanting to convert something that used to be retail to something that's restaurant, and now restaurant requires way more parking, so they can't use that space for the use they want, and they have to go get a variance from the zoning board. So we see all sorts of different scenarios, not just the residential scenarios, which I think are the ones generally that this board is familiar with through the provisions that we've provided relative to inclusionary zoning to create some flexibility for that, recognizing that those parking requirements are high. But basically, that's what requires parking. The one place in the city that we do not require parking is the downtown. So that's the BG6 or the CCOD-D, that area. So it's kind of the downtown core, and it's starting to kind of stem out a little bit because we see more and more folks seeing the advantage of having no parking requirements to drive their proposals. And that's been in place for decades. That's not a new thing the city's had on the books, and we obviously have plenty of parking in the downtown area. That is part of that BG6 district. So, you know, inherently having no requirements for parking doesn't mean that parking isn't going to be provided. There's a market need and demand for parking, and, you know, there are residents and businesses that have clients that are coming, and all of those different uses have some amount of demand for parking. It's going to vary by location in the city, and it's going to vary by the different types of users, right? So there are all sorts of different schools of thought on this. The kind of most progressive, obviously, is eliminating parking and imposing parking maximums. We do have parking maximums today in that same district, the BG6, the downtown. We impose parking maximums through the CCOD-D. So there are parking maximums which are equivalent to our current parking minimums elsewhere in the city. So that's our parking maximum that we have. And then the board can authorize through a special permit basically discretion to say someone can have more parking. And we have seen that a couple times, I believe, since we established that, more on kind of campus type sites. So that's something that I just want to highlight as well. In terms of location, parking is required to be provided on the same lot that it serves. So if you have, and we were talking about this earlier this evening on Ashland Street, I think, we have a requirement for parking to be on the same lot. Their parking did not meet the parking requirements on that same lot. So they were looking at an option for leasing off-site parking, but that leased off-site parking does not meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance to qualify for parking because it's not subject to a 5-year lease and it's not within 1,000 feet. So we have parameters where if you provide off-site parking, we only allow you to do that in manufacturing and business districts. And if you do that, basically we don't have a great way of keeping track of that. So, you know, over time, it's a challenge for us to kind of modify if someone sells their property and that lease has a clause in it that somehow with the transfer of ownership, it goes away. That's not something we necessarily have the capacity to go enforcing. So what this results in is inequitable enforcement of parking and who provides parking on properties. So that's kind of a reality of the requirements that we have around the location. It also means that, you know, you can't, you have, the way that we have it written, you have to have parking specific to each use, right? So even though you might have a mix of uses, the parking requirements don't allow you to sort of share that parking. The only place we start to contemplate doing that is within the commercial corridors overlay district, which we adopted back in 2015. So we've had about 10 years of that being on the books. In those areas, we allow certain types of uses to complement each other and share parking. So if you have a residential use and a coffee shop and the coffee shop closes, you know, residents are often at work at those hours, so those are complementary uses and have different peaking characteristics, and so it's appropriate for those to share parking. So we introduced provisions to allow for that, some portion of that administratively. And then once you kind of get to wanting to share more than half your parking, or you're coming into the planning board to get special permission to do that, which we've saw previously, not tonight, but previously related to the special permit at 225 Shrewsbury Street. That's a case where they needed to share parking, to reduce parking. That site has a lot of parking, but they don't meet our parking requirements. They had to reduce their parking requirements to be able to provide them. So just, again, contextually, Worcester's parking requirements are quite suburban. They're quite high. In terms of use, residential uses generally require 2 parking spaces per unit. Doesn't matter how big that unit is. It could be a studio apartment, still requires 2 parking spaces. Could be 4 beds, still requires 2 parking spaces. So it doesn't kind of contextualize, again, about sort of that space and how it's being occupied. Restaurants and bars require 1 parking space for every 2 occupants. And then retail and office spaces require 1 parking space for every 300 square feet. So those are just a few different requirements, ones that often come up, and I think folks are familiar with seeing and can kind of conceptualize like what that space would look like when you go into a retail or a restaurant, thinking about kind of what that means if you go into a restaurant and you see however many people, and you imagine for every 2 people, there must be 1 parking space somewhere. So that is what we're requiring. What happens is that folks can't meet those requirements, and they go to the zoning board and they ask for a variance. And the vast majority of those are approved. So what we have is sort of faulty requirements that result in consistent relief being granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And we do have other mechanisms for that relief, like we introduced through inclusionary zoning, and you all have been seeing. We do allow for folks to essentially reduce their parking up to 50% through special permit or almost automatically, depending on the situation. Where they have affordable units, those affordable units don't end up needing to provide required parking, and if they provide us with a transportation demand management plan, that plan can serve to reduce another basically quarter of their requirements up to, depending on the use, 25%. So that really kind of, when you tack them together, gets to about 50%, depending on the site. We still see folks that can't meet those parking requirements with that reduction, which means that, depending on the district that they're in, that's already a 1-to-1 reduction. So we're at like 1 parking space per unit, and folks are still not meeting that for a number of projects, particularly the projects that are providing the affordable housing. So we're still seeing that come in for the inclusionary zoning. So that it didn't go far enough, just as an example. So the adaptive reuse overlay allows for flexibility in parking. That anything in the adaptive reuse overlay is by special permit, not a great practice, because you're giving someone not predictable. If you're a developer, you can't assume that you're going to be able to do that because it's special permission. That makes that a risky investment. So for those lovely buildings that we're trying to find reuses for, it makes it harder to reuse them when we require special permission to be able to do something. So that's something for the adaptive reuse. So that brings the parking requirements down to a 1-to-1 for residential. So that's 1 unit or 1 space per unit. And then in CCOD, generally, we're reducing the overall parking requirements we were talking about before by a quarter or half, depending on the use and the context. And there are different areas within the city that have different requirements. On Shrewsbury Street, in that area, they're tied to the number of beds. They're not elsewhere in the overlay district, but in particular in that area, that was response of concerns from business owners at the time when that was established, as well as residents, about the number of vehicles and the size of units and how many cars people would have based on that. So there are nuances for that location. Through CCOD, we start to allow flexibility for bike parking, giving slight reductions in parking when people are providing bike parking. You see a challenge of getting folks to provide bike parking, because we often have discussions about encouraging bike parking and then folks not wanting to provide that. But at the same time, folks are looking for relief from parking requirements that we have. And folks, we're trying to encourage people to get around in the city in a variety of different ways. So it's definitely something to be thinking about. And then there are other different mechanisms that we have in CCOD. So we, for example, if you're reusing an existing building, we have thresholds where if your use is small enough, basically you're not going to trip a requirement to provide additional parking, and those only layer to a certain degree. And then if you are required to provide a very small parking lot, and if it's 5 spaces or less, we don't make you build it. We just waive it because we say we don't want tiny little parking lots to meet these silly zoning requirements, because that is not what we're trying to encourage in these corridors, right? Because that's within an area that we've decided is trying to be pedestrianized, trying to be urban. So having these small little parking lots are not the feel that we want in that section of the city. Instead, we'd rather see green space or outdoor seating or something else that's more vibrant and interesting than a parking lot. So we have a variety of different ways that we try to encourage that through CCOD. This is really complicated. It's complicated for people to go through and figure out what their requirements are. It's complicated for staff. It takes a lot of time for us to go through and evaluate and make sure that each of like the 12 different sections we've provided have been met. So it's time consuming, and again, it can create confusion for someone who's coming in. If you're a small business owner and you just want to occupy that space, you go to apply for your building permit and we put it on reject because it doesn't have the parking it needs. So now they're already paying their rent, and now they need to go in and start this whole other process, and they might not get a variance for parking. So it creates certainly a lot of uncertainty for folks in the community who are trying to navigate this, not just developers, but folks that are really trying to run a small business. Maybe they're relocating from a different area in the city, but we see that a lot and hear that feedback a lot about that challenge. Not just from residential developers, but really from a lot of folks that are just trying to start a new business. So we don't have requirements for parking for ADUs. Exciting. But there's a lot of literature out there about parking. So I think the question for you all is really kind of where you want to start the conversation. Now Next talked about really needing to overhaul parking broadly throughout the city, not just in certain locations, but citywide. The parking requirements are too high. And so that's sort of the tone that it's setting, and encouraging elimination in select areas or elimination more generally. So I think the board could be thinking about us wanting to eliminate parking wholesale, eliminate parking in certain areas of the city, look at just reducing parking or reducing parking in certain areas of the city. But Now Next is really saying parking needs to be reduced everywhere. So I will just kind of echo that's what we had said as part of that plan and identified as a policy issue, is that the parking is too high. And then we provided you in the packet too, if folks haven't had a chance to review it. I think or you may have reviewed it when the memo came out, but there's data that was provided in a brief from the Research Bureau, and just a couple of statistics that kind of get at the census data around what people actually have for cars, right? Because folks often just identify with what they know, but what they know isn't necessarily representative of what others in the community experience. So folks in the community that have no car, or 1 car, owner occupancy, that's about 40%, just under. So about 40% of owner-occupied units have 1 or no cars. There's a lot that don't have cars. For renters, that number is about 67. So that's really high. So basically, we have more than half, almost 3/4 of renters that don't have a car or have 1 car. And then for owner occupants, we have 40%. So, the numbers are obviously around the converse. These are slightly imperfect because of the way that the data is. But you're looking at, for the most part, a lot of community members that don't have a car or just have 1 car. So kind of thinking about our requirements, which require 2 spaces, that's the reality and the experience that many people have, is that they don't have that. So what that means is we have parking spaces sitting empty that could be used for other purposes. Thinking about the value of that parking stall and what that provides to the tax base, or what that looks like and it feels like, planning for that space. We're dealing with a housing crisis and trying to find ways to accommodate folks and provide affordable housing. And obviously there's a cost to parking to functionally build it, right? There's a cost to construct it, and then there's a cost for that. And just because we require it doesn't mean that it's free for whoever is using it. So there's a cost associated with that a property owner is going to carry on to maybe a tenant or whoever it is that's coming into that space, whether it's a guest or a resident or business owner who's having to provide accommodations for folks. So we're definitely at a point where, the city is sort of thinking about parking and how we manage parking better from a public parking perspective, right? Thinking about parking as assets, and you've seen a lot of metering happening for parking spaces. Keep in mind, from a zoning perspective, no parking on the street can count. That is not parking because it's not exclusively available for use. So none of the parking on the street counts towards parking or what your parking requirements are. It has to be on the site that you're using or through a lease off-site within these certain parameters. So that's just kind of existing parking, some options for what you can consider. We'll be doing research, and continuing to kind of compile best practices and making some decisions about what we think we can implement, but really wanting to get the feel of the board members on how you all feel about this. We've talked a lot about it through the Now Next process, so I have a bit of a sense. We've heard a lot from community members through that process about wanting to see, land allocations in other ways. So I'm just curious if the board members have thoughts, have questions, have information you'd like to see. I will mention that in the packet that we provided did include a map that shows the zoning districts where we have either by special permit or through automatic adjustments like the commercial corridor overlay, where we have provisions that reduce parking, and that does include the area for the BG6 where we don't have parking, as well as surface lots. Those are municipal lots, but also lots that the primary land use is parking. So you can kind of see where those are in the city, a lot of which are in the urban core. And it shows the bus lines and bus stops, so those little dots all along there are the bus stops that you're seeing, as well as the train station. So just to kind of give you a sense of other transportation modes and the zoning that we have in place. We did not show kind of the background underlying what's manufacturing or business, because really the parking requirements don't so much matter by zoning district. It's all about by what use it is. So.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Thank you for that overview. Before we discuss, anybody from the public want to speak on this tonight?
Do I have to say my name first?
You do, yes.
My name is Evan Carcasinas, through the chair.
You don't have to say that now, just when you're not supposed to talk to anybody else. I don't know why public meetings run this way, but you're supposed to talk to me. So if you wanted to ask Ms. Smith a question, you would say through the chair to Ms. Smith.
Oh.
I don't know why.
Okay. I just want to make a comment. Personally, I'm in favor of eliminating parking requirements because they're really from a bygone era, like the 50s, where they thought cars were going to be the future of everything forever. So I think a lot of the numbers are just arbitrary and kind of based on people that, were thinking that we're going to end up at a different future. And looking at pictures from the past, like old historical photos of downtown, it was really gutted for parking, and I don't think the city benefited from it. So I think less parking requirements would be very beneficial to people and developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone online?
And I'll just mention too, when we talk about eliminating parking, often that it will get called market-driven parking. So you eliminate the parking requirement, but what you have is market-driven parking. We still see in the BG6, right, where we don't require parking, we still see people building parking. We have a number of projects recently where there are probably excessive parking, but ultimately, the developer may have plans to share or rent that parking to other units that are coming online, like we had kind of in that table talk quadrant, where the various different developers were kind of collaborating to say, you're building the parking garage, but I'm going to have my tenants rent parking from you if they want to rent parking. So it's not to say that parking doesn't get constructed, and there are lots of communities that have gone from, okay, we're not quite ready to eliminate it, so let's reduce it, and then they go back and they eliminate it later. So we've seen that in communities over and over, and we do see the trend, particularly in cities, of folks moving towards elimination of parking. In Massachusetts, you've seen that in Somerville and Cambridge. Other examples are like Hartford, Connecticut, Buffalo, New York. All those communities have eliminated parking requirements at the kind of community scale. So that's certainly one option. Obviously, could be reduction, could be elimination in some areas. So curious the board members' thoughts.
Thank you. Let's have some board member discussion.
Cool. Thank you for the enlightening overview. That was very helpful to hear that some of those requirements and perspectives that you're thinking about. Thank you to the gentleman who spoke as well, waiting for a very long meeting to get to this point. Yeah, I think overall, I am completely in support with the Now Next plan and a lot of the concerns that you were talking about our parking requirements being way too onerous. I would be in favor of being fairly aggressive in reducing a lot of those requirements. When we're talking about market, it still produces quite a number of parkings regardless, but I think there's probably even scenarios or locations, corridors, where parking maximums would be appropriate. I know we already have some, but, or not allowing, yeah. So I think even just going a step beyond not requiring them in certain places, but to say that we should not have limiting the number of parking spaces. I know we've approved a number of projects over the last few years where it was kind of painful to see the number of parking spaces going in, or structured parking, which, unlike a parking lot, is not likely to go away anytime soon. So yeah, I mean, I think that the Now Next plan obviously identified a number of corridors where it would make sense to be probably more aggressive in reducing or eliminating parking requirements. But I think citywide as a whole, as Ms. Smith outlined, I think there's a lot of opportunities to kind of get with the program, so to speak, catch up with the national trend of urban areas reducing parking requirements. I also think it's important to simplify this process for everyone involved, the city, developers, our board. And I think there's also an environmental piece to this where reducing impervious space is important, and it's just, no one wants to see unused parking spaces littered throughout the city. So that's kind of where my perspective, and would be interested to hear what everyone else thinks.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Go to Mr. King.
Thank you. I think I'm in line with kind of the trend of trying to reduce parking requirements in the larger cities, making them more walkable. I do think with how Worcester's parking requirements are structured currently, it is pretty intricate and structured. So if we could simplify that process to make it easier for developers, owners, whomever, that would be helpful. I do think there's opportunities in some districts to eliminate the requirements, and then of course we can look at reducing them in other areas. And that would be my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Delera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so I agree with both my colleagues on this. You know, having, as Michelle alluded to earlier, I've seen a lot of these asks regarding the need to reduce parking in my capacity on the ZBA. And it's reflective of, as our resident attested to, it's reflective of a very different era, an outdated view on our parking needs. And so I'm very much open to tightening up the requirements, trying to, I think, expand the menu of options. For example, Michelle described the idea of having a parking maximum. And so if we could surgically identify areas where this sort of approach makes sense, I'd be in favor of utilizing every tool in our toolbox. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Delera. Mr. Toomey.
One of the things I think that affects Worcester with the parking is the lack of reliable transit. So the ability to be able to park one place and be able to do that. Going into Boston, the Boston Garden for an event, parking at Riverside and being able to take the train into the Boston Garden, where if you come into the Centrum in Worcester, there's not really a place to be able to park remotely and be able to take that public transit into the centrum or the downtown area consistently to be able to do that. So I think that complicates it. And as at a recent traffic and parking meeting, and the people that were looking to be able to get handicap parking for where their residents were, but the businesses were looking at, there's not going to be any parking for businesses, and just the conflict between those two groups of the residences versus the businesses and being able to maintain them. Open parking where anyone can park is one thing, but then when you have restricted parking, I think it makes it difficult for the businesses for that. It's something that definitely needs to be addressed, and it's, again, it's not an easy topic to be able to look at and just come up with an easy solution. And many neighborhoods will have different requirements than other neighborhoods based upon that.
Thank you, Mr. Toomey. For myself, respectfully to my colleagues and to Ms. Smith, I'm strongly in favor of simplifying this to a great degree, and I think moving to a market-driven solution where there are no parking requirements is appropriate and would strongly support it. And I'll tell you why, which is, I think, generally speaking, kind of rule of thumb is there's about 10 parking spaces per car in the United States. That's too many. If we go about a piecemeal approach, which is, I'm sorry to say, in my own frustrations with, sort of the way in which decisions get made, probably what we'll wind up with. But if we go with a piecemeal approach, we're not moving the needle fast enough, because regulation, zoning regulation in particular, has a very long lag before it affects the environment that we see around us. So were we to change today and, say, well, we're going to go from, 2 parking spaces in most of our residential districts per unit to 1, it's 50 years from now before that matters, has any meaningful impact on the amount of parking in our city. And we have too much parking, especially downtown. There's a concept of induced demand that kind of when people talk about traffic, they talk about induced demand as it relates to highway lanes. If you add another lane on the highway, traffic gets better, but it only gets better for a short amount of time because now more people drive on that highway. I think the reverse is also true for parking. One of the great challenges the WRTA has is that ridership is relatively low, even though fares are free. And that's because it's so easy to park. I think it would be, Mr. Toomey is absolutely right. Like, we need, in order for us to realize this utopia where we have less parking spaces that I'm trying to describe, we need better public transit. I think that those two things go hand in hand. You start to reduce the parking minimums or eliminate them entirely, recognizing that it's going to be 25 years before you really see any effect to that. And transit will keep pace with that. I would make sort of 2 other points. First point is that we live in an age of mobility that is, I'm only 40 years old, is vastly different than when I was a kid in terms of e-bikes and scooters and all these electronic means of transportation. There's a guy that rides an electronic unicycle. I see him all the time downtown. Like, there's a lot of that going on. It's kind of a golden age of being able to get about in a bunch of different modes. Uber is a whole another issue. I spent 2 years living in the city. I own a business, and I gave my company vehicle to one of my employees because he needed it when I was going on vacation. I never got it back. 2 years went by before I finally got around to having to buy a car. And honestly, I didn't even really need it. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I'm mostly an engineer, but I also own a restaurant downtown. And when we built the restaurant, it has no parking, by the way. When we built the restaurant, everybody in the world that we talked to inside the city of Worcester believed that we were going to fail because there was no parking downtown. To a person, and we were seeking investors, to be clear. This is, other business owners, financial types in the city. And my business partner's from New York, from Queens. And he thought this was hilarious. He's like, he'd cooked in New York City, he'd cooked in Boston. You go to those cities, and people do not expect to be able to drive right up to the restaurant, park their car, get out, and walk in the front door. That's just not how it's done. We still don't have parking. We've been in business for 10 years. I think the restaurant's pretty successful. We don't need as much parking as we have. So when it comes time to discuss an actual ordinance, I hope what we're discussing is eliminating parking requirements entirely, moving to a market-based system where instead of variances from minimums, we're talking about variances from maximums, and we let that long lag of policy kind of catch up with the future that we think is probably here already, but is coming.
Let's snap that.
Any other comments? Get what you need?
I think we've definitely got specific feedback. I would leave it to you all if you want to just close this out and send this back to ED committee, and they can continue a conversation, and we can, draft up some notes. Really, this is just, again, soliciting general input, so it doesn't have to be in a particular form. If you feel like you want to talk about it again in another meeting, we can just have a secondary discussion, but if you all feel like we're good, we can, this is feedback for us to take and go back to the Economic Development Committee, get their feedback, and then go, not to the drawing board, but go to the deciding what language goes where and what numbers go where. Hopefully not arbitrarily picking anything, but
I think we should, I would entertain a motion to, I can't make motions, but I would entertain a motion to send this to Economic Development Committee with our notes, and allow any board member to put this item back on the agenda should additional discussion seem like it's warranted.
I would make that motion.
Second.
On the motion, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Delera?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That motion passes 4-0.
thank you. We'll probably type these notes up and end up sending this to you all just to make sure we captured your thoughts correctly. So if for whatever reason we didn't, feel free to give us some feedback and let us know. Otherwise, we'll send it along.
Okay. Moving on, the subdivision, item number 9A.
Through the chair, we recommend holding that item for tonight.
Okay. Moving to A&Rs.
All right, so first up, we have a couple A&Rs on the agenda tonight that are not properly before the board, so we're gonna, off the bat, push off A&R 11A, 3 Sherwood Trail, A&R 11E, 0 Julian Avenue, A&R 11G, 100 and 120 Thomas Street, and then 11H, Washington Front and Foster Street. They're not properly before the board, but we'll be happy to get to them next meeting. First one we're looking at is 5 Elmer Street. This is on a public street. The existing lot today is comprised of the 2 lots, Plan East. The applicant also owns the single family to the left. They had previously divided this lot into 2, and now they're seeking to draw the line in orange straight through the building. They're proposed a single-family semi-detached duplex unit here with 35 feet of frontage per lot, which is the minimum requirement in the RL7 zoning district for this type of dwelling. Next up, we have 25 Crawford Street. This one is a bit of a more unique situation. So it's one parcel today. They're seeking to split it up into Lot A on the left and Parcel B on the right. Crawford Street is a private street, and it extends 285 feet east of Commonwealth Avenue, which is not on this plan, but you can see the road ends right in the middle of the 2 lots. It's not on the official map anywhere to the right, so this Parcel B does not have sufficient frontage in this zoning district, which is RL7. 65 feet of frontage is required. They have about 44 feet, I believe, of frontage on the official map, and Crawford Street, even the frontage that they have on the official map, is not improved to a sufficient extent, so they've noted this lot as non-buildable. It's eligible to endorse this way, but should they want to build on it in the future, they'll be back to remove that designation. The lot on the left does have sufficient frontage along the private way. Next up, we have 336 Southwest Cutoff. This parcel is along Southwest Cutoff, and as you can see, it extends very deep to the north. It's a very long parcel. We're in the MG2 zoning district. There's no minimum frontage requirement. They're seeking to chop off the back half of the parcel, and it will be held in common with the landowner right to the left of it. So the parcel would be conveyed to an existing parcel with frontage along Escow Road. All right, last but not least, we have 33 Bedford Avenue and Belmont Avenue. It's an existing single family. It's on this corner lot here. Delma and Bedford Ave are both public streets, sufficiently improved. They're seeking to construct a single family attached style unit. So they're looking to do townhomes and connect 2 new units to the existing single family for a townhouse style. We're in the RG5 zoning district. You need 30 feet of frontage. 20 feet of frontage per each unit of that townhouse. So each of these lots has more than sufficient frontage along Bedford Ave for the plan to be endorsable. And that is all we have for A&Rs.
Thank you. With that, I'd make a motion to approve A&Rs 11B, C, D, and F.
Second?
On the motion, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Delera?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0. There is a notice of a community outreach meeting in your board packets that you're all welcome to look at. Any discussion on board policies and procedures?
I'll just say really quickly, we did move our next meeting to the 19th of November, as I'm sure you all are aware. But as we get through the holiday months, if anybody has any absences, if you could let us know and just confirm your attendance for the December 3rd meeting, so not our next, but second meeting out. Just, I'm sure it'll get even harder to schedule with the holidays coming up. So I appreciate you all making the time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Russell, there is one set of minutes from September 3rd. Any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of September 3rd.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 I abstain because I wasn't here, but motion passes 3-0. And motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.